I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
From the gates of Mount Rome to the far corners of the endless highway, wherever you are, welcome to the show.
So you believe in some kind of Armageddon?
Yeah, most definitely. We in the last times and days right now. The Illuminati's in effect.
Welcome back to the show. Got a good one planned for you today. Joining me here is Heidi Luv from the Unfiltered Rise podcast and JJ Vance from Operation GCD. How are you guys doing today?
Great. I'm glad we're here. We're going to name this show one day. Me and Tim do shows often, and I'm like, we got to name our show.
Yeah, we're
Nice.
working on it.
The collaborative series. Now, I appreciate the invite, Tim. Enjoyed the last conversation we had on my Friday show with the Occult Rejects, and Heidi and I always collaborate.
Uh-oh.
We got to freeze early on
You
here.
froze up. JJ, come back.
We'll see if he jumps back on
He
here.
usually comes back through. It's usually not too bad, but
I'm
he's
back.
Oh, there you
Yep,
are.
you are
You're
back.
You're back.
Yeah, we got some storms going. No, I appreciate the invite, Tim, to be a guest on your show here. But yeah, JJ Vance, not the vice president, host of Operation GCD. But looking
Every
forward to
time-
the conversation.
Perfect.
Every time JJ does that, he looks at me because he knows I'm going to laugh. And I've heard it 10,000 times, but I can't. I don't know.
And you're both occult rejects. And so,
Yes, sir.
tell anybody anything else I may have missed if you want.
Tell him where
Well-
to find you, JJ.
Well, the Operation GCD Live on Wednesdays, every Wednesday at 8, YouTube, Rumble, and Twixter. And Patreon Sundays, Operation GCD Live, 8 p.m. on Sundays, same locations, YouTube, Rumble,
Awesome.
and Twixter. But I also do a Friday show with the Occult Rejects, the host Nick over there at the Occult Rejects, that is, 9 p.m. on those same locations, YouTube, Rumble, Twixters. But it's the Occult Rejects where Nick's kind of banded together a more or less a all-star cast of conspiracy culture content creators here, because that might be too many C's in one sentence. But it started off as a different show, but he certainly evolved it into that. And I've I've been one of the individuals on there that's kind of bridged that transition. And Heidi's been more of a recent addition, but we've been pumping out some great Mormon content since Heidi's come over there to join the team.
I love it.
Myself,
It's
a former
fun.
Mormon.
Yes, so much fun. We have like a great time over there. And I do think we scare our guests at times, especially Greg. Greg Carlwood came into like a full screen.
There
It
were
was
like 10 of you
everywhere.
guys for that one, right?
Right.
There was 11, but one had to wait in the back. There were so many
yeah.
people.
I think you
right?
guys
It was-
probably had to have broken some sort of record with that one. I know I've never seen a podcast with 10 people on it before. That was a first for me.
it
Yeah, I
was
think
fun.
we had everybody but one. I think Teresa might have been the only occult
Right,
reject
yeah.
not present yesterday.
That's why. Oh, and was Headless there? No.
Oh, you're right. Headless was
Headless.
not there. You're right.
Yeah.
Wow, we're up to
So
13
two.
now.
Yeah. Oh. Good.
Yeah,
good.
I really
time.
enjoy all of y'all's content. I enjoy Unfiltered Rise podcast, of course. I enjoy the Occult Rejects and all the stuff they're doing over there. And I'm now newly familiar with your show, JJ, and I've caught a couple episodes and I like that too. So you're two people
Nice.
who I'm really happy to be here with. I know we kind of had like a little bit of a loose kind of a concept for this one. And we'll see where it goes. If we stick to that, I can't think of two better people to do it with when it comes to like the history of this nation and how the Mormons are involved. Because I mean, I think there's a lot of mysteries concerning the origins of this country in general. Because for years people believed it was all about 1492 and
Right.
Columbus. Of course, we know that's kind of out on its way out now. And then there's 1776. But I think there's a lot more to the story. And I think loosely the reason for this show is like I want to know like more of like what the Mormons were doing back in the day, of course, what the secret societies were doing, and what the high societies were doing, and like what we
Sure.
can learn about our past by looking at mounds and artifacts and Mormons and their involvement. I don't know. Is that all going to work together? Is that too much?
I
I
think
think
that's an
so.
excellent breakdown. Yeah.
Yeah, I brought a bunch of not a bunch, but like maybe 10 or 12 pictures too to show people some stuff later. But the alchemical stuff
Oh,
today, I hit Nick up about some of our landscape stuff, and it's weird. I never went down that road before. And this book, JJ, have you read this book?
Oh no, the Messiah to ancient America. Okay,
This we have to do a full episode on one day. But while I
I'll
was
check it out.
flipping, yeah, it's like in the 80s, Warren Ferguson. And
Oh,
I'm
Scotsman
flipping,
too, huh? I like it.
yeah, yeah, I'm flipping through it. And guess what I see? This is the table of the nine.
Get
ah,
out of here.
No, I'm dead serious. And this guy's an ex-Mormon. He was a Mormon, and then they kind of kicked him out, and then he went back to being a Mormon, normal Mormon, because they got mad at him for this. And he goes through all of the gods. Actually, it's really cool. This whole chart is like each like Greek, Mesopotamia, Syria, Egypt, what their names are and what they're like related to. And it was really
oh, that's
helpful.
cool. I mean, how Mormon is it though? Like, is it pretty
Well,
Mormon? Like the lens that he's looking through is pretty
he got kicked
staunch.
out. He
Okay.
got kicked.
Does he
Yeah, but
write
did he?
it? Does he write it like an ex-Mormon, or is he like still
Yeah.
okay?
He's a Mormon. I would say more a Mormon at this point. And he's trying to prove it's the whole Quetzalcoatl thing. And we'll do a whole thing on it later with the Mexico involvement and
Right.
everything. But he brings like hieroglyphs and all kinds of connections to Quetzalcoatl. But when I saw that table of nine, I had to bring it tonight to show you because I was like, oh my gosh, this is like we've been talking about this. So,
Oh, for
and
sure.
then yeah, we'll be getting into Native American stuff tonight. So,
Well,
We
let
pretty
were
me.
we were just
interesting.
talking about the Mormons' interest in all those temples down there in Mexico, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
what?
That's why I bought the
What's
book.
the table
Oh,
of the
nice.
nine? Is it in
R9.
like the
R9.
seance of the nine?
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah,
same group.
it seems to be a repeating
Well,
factor from the ancient
the
Egypt
Egyptian.
Ennead,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Ennead or
Ennead.
Ennead?
Yeah. I'm not
Wow.
sure how you say it. Ennead. I've heard it. Ennead. Ennead. I'm
Ennead,
not
right?
sure
I think
how,
it's
but
Samsonite.
yeah, this is great. Like it's like a whole, he's got like, look, all these maps in here. He went crazy, man.
It sounds like it. Now
And
I got the book saved here. I'm definitely gonna I'll definitely join you for
this is a
review on
good
that.
one.
I'll have to read
Yeah.
that one here.
This one's going to go well with our Mexico American type connections, but very strange that I found it with that. I was like looking for other stuff and I was like, oh, that's for me.
When it
Even if,
comes to like archaeology and just that whole world, like I've been into it for a little bit now. And one of the things that I've noticed time and time again is that Mormons pop up
Oh
and
yeah.
their involvement in like looking through old artifacts and just North American history in general. The Mormons are always there. Um, I don't know, like if you get like a lot of people get into this via Graham Hancock, I think so,
mhm.
and I kind of did as well. I mean, he wasn't the main guy. He wasn't the only guy, but he was one of them. But, once I started learning about the mounds and just everything North American that largely we're not really told about, um,
Right.
I kept seeing a lot of Mormon names pop up, Mormon guys pop up. And I was like, okay, I wonder what this is all about. And I'll tell you another thing, like if we get to it today, I'll break this guy down, but John Wesley Powell, when he
Yep.
went into the Grand Canyon for the first time, which is like what he's
Speaking
venerated
of the
for.
Egyptian gods,
Yeah, this
Right.
is the Smithsonian
uh-huh.
anthropologist, John
Yeah.
Wesley Powell.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yep.
And the Cosmos Club and some
Oh
other
yeah.
organizations. But
Yep.
so he's remembered heroically for that Grand Canyon trip he took. If you
Sure.
look him up on YouTube, all you're going to see are people like talking about how big of a hero he was for doing this trip. I'm on the team of he wasn't that great of a guy, and I can break that down later. But all that
I
to
agree with you.
say,
From my research of the mounds, I concur.
yes, yes, all that to say, when he went through the Grand Canyon, he took Mormons with him. So I was like, oh, there they are again.
There they
Yep.
are. They're like
Well,
Kevin Bacon. Yeah.
you got to take them there. That's their country, right? Like that wasn't when he's going out
Mhm.
there. What year was that? 1880, mid 80s, mid 1880s,
I want to say it was before the 80s because well,
1870s.
he officially started working for the Smithsonian in maybe 78 or 79,
Yeah.
1879. So I'm assuming, yeah, he was working for them. Maybe it was the 1880s.
If I recall correctly, it was prior to the Mormons joining America back in was it 1894, Heidi?
Boy, I can't remember, but I do know that,
I think we'll call it circa 1894. It's around that time.
they sent
1892, 1894.
their wonderful
So,
block to the Washington Monument was still there. Their
well, that was
Deseret.
far earlier, right? That was what 1853.
Yeah, I'll Google it while you guys are
So
chatting for a minute.
that's a good point. So on the Washington Monument, you can see the block that was donated by the state of Utah, but was known then as the Nation of Deseret.
They sent the all-seeing eye. It was
What's the
hysterical.
nation of Deseret?
That's what the Mormons call the homeland, their homeland.
Okay.
That's what they wanted to call America, presumably because Joseph Smith wanted to make everybody Mormon again.
And was
So
he
everyone
assassinated?
great again. He said, "Make everybody Mormon
Mhm.
again."
Sorta.
Was
Yeah.
he killed, or was he like straight up assassinated?
Oh, I think he was assassinated. I think it was a Society of Cincinnati assassination because I think it was represented another divide within the society where they were like, "Wait a second, we left the religious, rulers of Europe. We're not doing that here in America.
Hmm.
We don't care who your God is, Joseph, or what you're doing." And it's often attributed to fellow Freemasons, and that's probably true. It probably was fellow Freemasons, but the subject that's not discussed is the origin story surrounding the Society of Cincinnati and the origin story of the Mormon Church, including Joseph Smith, whose grandfather was a member of the society out of Massachusetts
Yes,
as an
great
officer of the
grandpa.
war.
Yeah, he was literally on the whole Boston Tea Party business, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
so they were hooked
okay.
in. They were deep
I
in there.
found it, speaking of secret societies, with this Boston Tea Party group when I was looking for other things. They called it the Caucus Pro Bono Publico. So and he was an attorney. And so people want to say that Joseph Smith's family wasn't, educated bullcrap. His last name's on there and then has Esquire after, so BS wise. But it sounds like, that kind of sounds like pro bono type stuff right there. Like an attorney, caucus pro bono publico, like
Sure.
attorney.
Yeah, sounds like legalese. Now I think
But
Joseph
it was a
Smith,
society. Yeah.
he ran for president, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
We got him murdered.
So-
So we
Okay.
got him murdered.
That's what I was
So
thinking.
they didn't. Two things I think they got him murdered. One, he wanted to make everybody Mormon. Two is I have this. You're not going to find any evidence about this. This is just a noted theory I put together based upon the details that you can verify. So it's a circumstantial argument, but it seems to be there's a faction within the Society of Cincinnati of a hereditary member of the society, meaning a member of the paternal bloodline of one of the original members, right? And it's not always paternal. And Heidi's recently sent me on a journey regarding the Bouvier family, which I've uncovered where it's certainly not paternal. It gets passed down through consecutive females sometimes, I found in this instance. And that's because Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy is actually descended from numerous society families of the French and American side. It's the French American side marrying together is her heritage. But my point being there is it's not always easy to decipher who is the member, but it seems to be when a hereditary member of a paternal member from one of the original members gets elected president or is in the running to be elected president, like Joseph Smith. There's a faction within the society that just says we got to murk that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he may have been a rogue Freemason. They may have figured maybe he's not, he's causing too much trouble for us as well. That might be a factor. But
I think
Sure.
the Kabbalah too. He was studying and he was letting the Kabbalic secrets out, and they were like that part was supposed to be the quiet part, not out loud, dum dum. So,
But I will say this: I think there's a lot of factors here, and you guys know
Oh yeah.
more. You guys are the Exmos here. I'm not, so you guys know way more
N-
about this. But I do want to eventually come back to the Society of the Cincinnati too,
mhm.
just in general. But
Sure.
like, there's this link between American archaeology and Mormons, and like,
Mhm.
I'd love for somebody to like
They love
codify
dig
that for me.
they love digging into stuff.
Yeah,
The
and they
gold
hide it.
plates
Yeah.
that they do.
Oh,
And
and
I did want to
So
tell people before, because I'll forget, Samuel Smith from Topsfield, Massachusetts is the great grandpa's name. You can look it up because I'll get called a liar. So there's that.
that's Essex County. Is that Essex County, the same
Yes,
place that the Salem witch trials, right?
it is. He was involved in them. Yeah, he
Right.
was an accuser of a witch. A witch. Methinks you protest too much, Mr. Samuel, but that's fine. He had two women hung, and this is why you cannot go down the regular genealogical road like normally. You can ask JJ. You can do that normally with Mormons, fairly easy because everybody tracks it. But for some reason with Joseph, they're like, we don't know where these people came from, and we can't track their parentage, and we don't know anything. And I'm like, bull crap. This is all really documented. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And that example of Joseph Smith being descended from somebody in the witch trials, being starting this huge major occult movement, because
Yes.
it's ceremonial magic. I
Yep.
would argue within the polygamy faction that was occurring and probably still occurs within Mormonism in the upper echelons, that's rooted in sex magic. They may be
Yes.
doing polygamy, but the concept in which polygamy was introduced was as a result of sex magic being practiced.
And this all goes back pretty far. It goes back into older orders, older occult traditions, I would assume, because one of the things that's
Absolutely.
been brought to my attention is that golden tablet, one of the symbols on Joseph Smith's golden tablet, was also found in Alabama at what's called the Welsh Caves. And it's the same symbol that was found in Cornwall as well.
Mm,
Well, and I'm
awesome.
glad you're pointing that out. So I think what's going on there is these things are being passed down through generational bloodlines, right? So, and another example of that outside of just what you provided within this Celtic history of Joseph Smith, which I think is what we're talking about there, is the Celts were here. I would say there's evidence of it long before the Templars, but the Celts are the ancestors in much large part to the Templars. So we're talking about the same groups of people, but we live underneath the crown history. So not the crayon, I'm sorry, the crown, like the British crown and the Vatican crown,
Mm,
right? The Holy See,
right.
right? We live under their versions of history, and those have changed a little bit over time in America. You mentioned in the beginning, Tim, the 1492 mysteries of Christopher Columbus. That really didn't get introduced until 1890 in the World's Fair.
Hmm.
Before that, there wasn't this folklore of Christopher Columbus before that.
And I'll
Well,
get into
and
something
the
else later
Welsh,
too. But
the
in 1880, is when I think they started introducing this idea that they weren't going to date items prior to Columbus. I
mm.
can show you the document that's in and everything. I'm sorry, Heidi. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the Book of Mormon. When you want to talk about parentage and genealogy, it's very funny that the only second language ever produced, with the Book of Mormon, it goes from English to Welsh. So
Mm.
just saying,
There you go.
very first. Not saying it didn't make it through more languages later, but obviously there was a big, people that needed this book in Welsh. So I mean, yeah.
You've got this Bell Beaker people that I've been hearing more
Yeah,
about lately, and they come from that area. They would have been in
yeah.
the Welsh area, and there's a lot of artifacts over here from them as well. So, and I
They're
could.
allegedly the folks who built Stonehenge, right? They're at least in part credited. Some folks do. They built mounds around the location of Stonehenge. I realize Stonehenge has been reconfigured and whatnot, but it is still an ancient megalithic site that has now been reconfigured into tourist fashion. But nonetheless, they've also destroyed the mounds around there of those Beaker people. I did a DNA test, and strangely enough, according to whatever software scientists they want to decipher these DNA tests, I did multiple of them, but I had a lot of questions. Different story, but the Point being is that my paternal lineage apparently goes back to the Beaker people, according to
Mm.
DNA tests. So I like to joke that I've been a mound person for a very long time.
Yes.
Oh, that's why he's
Possibly it's in your
obsessed. Yeah,
bloodline.
It's in my DNA.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's right.
I mean, that's you see the influence from not just Europe or Welsh territories, but also, Scandinavia or greater Scandinavia. They were coming over here well before that 1492 date.
Oh, for sure.
They say on, let's see, what's the latest thing I've seen on Wikipedia? Not that it matters, but just to
No, I
give
mean, it
us
does matter because it's a kind of the normative understanding of things, right? I use it as a baseline to see where folks are at. You know what I mean?
You're right. Yeah, and I like that. I like what you're saying there with that. The one of the latest things I've seen on there is that they say that there's only one known Viking or Scandinavian village up in Newfoundland, and it's there, and it dates back to a thousand AD. So
You're talking about Law and Saw Meadows?
I think so, yes, but
Yeah,
I
that's
would
Nova Scotia, New
yes,
Scotland.
it's
The
Drink
Micmacs.
right?
Yeah.
yeah, but I would argue that there's more sites
Oh,
than
for
that.
sure, for sure.
Mhm.
I'd argue they didn't just come to modern day Canada. They did, but they came down. They came down through New England. And, they went down
Definitely.
through the Great Lakes, I think, too.
I
I mean,
agree. There's strong evidence that New England and that up area through Nova Scotia was all Vinland, right? So
right.
actually, funny story. I almost got expelled from eighth grade American history. Well, eighth grade over an American history course regarding this subject because what you're saying is that that's a long recognized site. I think UNESCO recognized that Law and Saw Meadow site in like 1964, if I remember correctly. So I'm reading, my teacher's spouting off a bunch of nonsense and saying, 1492 stuff. I'm like, raising my hand, teacher, yada, yada, yada. Right here in your book, it says on page like 12, Law and Saw Meadows, what's up with that? She's like, no, 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 it's 1492. And then, obviously I wasn't going to accept that. And then I think the only reason I didn't get expelled, and I didn't really do anything wrong except for, dispute the matters and refuse to agree. And they're like, he's a Mormon, so it's a religious freedom thing. We'll just let it go. And I'm like, wait a second, no, it's in your book, dum dums. It's literally in your book. They invaded that in 1066. So if you look at it, the Normans, the Norman invasion of the UK, right? Norman from the Normandy into the UK, the change of power essentially with William the Conqueror, or as the Britons call him, William the whatever, the terrorist or whatever. Um, they invaded not only the UK, they invaded what we now call Nova Scotia. So that settlement, like you're talking about, was early 1000. So I think it's dated around 1060 or so. So it's literally the same time. It's the Vikings. They got Christianized. They became the Normans, right?
Mm-hmm. And like,
William,
so here's one version of it. Sorry to cut you off. I'll keep it brief.
No, you're good. You're good. These are the group of people we're talking about. So it is the same
Yeah.
people. The Vikings and the Norse. They become the Normans, right?
Yes.
They're together. Right?
And I think that this is accounted in a saga, Eric the Red here down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yep, there it goes. It says it right there. But
Yeah.
your date's right. I think we pretty much nailed this before we pulled it up.
Oh, 78. Yeah, well, there we go. Close enough. Yeah, I mean, it's been there. It's been like what, 50 years later almost, right?
Oh,
You know
well,
what I
no,
mean?
it says 1960 on here somewhere.
Okay.
I thought. But yeah.
Let's see a 78. Oh, yeah, 1960. There you go. Okay, yep.
1960. But yeah,
Yes, sir.
so we've got the name appears, let's see.
Yeah, and it isn't. It's even. That's what I'm saying. There's evidence. There's probably more settlements that aren't being recognized. I know Heidi and I have discussed the Micmac natives up there around this site right there, and there's evidence of Welsh and Templar villages and buildings and whatnot, castles that are up there, and the locals have it in their folklore, but no one really recognizes these things.
Well, and I guess before the Micmac were Micmac, he says to also this guy from Canada sent in a message to me about the Beothuk. And he's like, you should look into that. He's from there. He's from Newfoundland. And he was like, I heard you talking about the Micmac because I have some Micmac in my DNA. And so I wanted to know what it was. And I mentioned
Sure.
it. And by the way, I guess now we're supposed to call them Mi'kmaq because that's what they prefer. So. But I didn't know that.
I'd be curious to know how close related the Mi'kmaws is that what we're calling them.
That's what he says that the new generation wants to be called that.
It almost sounds like something out of Harry Potter. Are this
Right?
new generation Harry Potter fans?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure that's what he said. He said that the woke generation. So
Exactly.
that made me
I'm
laugh.
looking for, I've got it somewhere in this book. There's a diagram that shows the Micmac language and the characters they used right up against the
Yeah.
Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
Here it is right here. And they match. They match. I don't know how well this is going to look on.
Yep.
I'll at least just show up this. You know, there's actually 2 pages of this in here for people curious. If anybody's interested in this book, it's a good book. It's called America BC by the great Barry Fell. But yeah,
great book.
So it's like, okay, so Micmac, or however we're supposed to say it now. I was taught Micmac, so
we're
I'm
talking about the past. Yeah. And shout out David for sending in that message to me. I like to give my credit.
Shout out to David.
There you go. Always appreciate some input, right?
Now, what do you guys think? This would suggest that they had interactions with Egyptians, or they came from a genealogical pool of people that they shared with Egyptians.
There you go. I think it's these, how do things get passed down, right? How do the Templar become expert sailors? How do they know how to be an expert sailor? You got to learn how to read the sky to navigate by the stars, and to do that, you got to be an expert in mathematics. And how do these things get passed down, right? And I think it is through generations, through families, right? It's so that's an ancient language that just gets passed down, through families, I think, right?
Right. I mean, that's got to be the case. And there's evidence of this all throughout this country, all over North America. There's evidence of everything we've talked about so far, and some of the stuff that JJ's talking about there. With these people were deeply, deeply knowledgeable on the stars. Yep. And you see that in the mounds, even in the mounds, especially across Ohio. I don't know if you guys have heard of, I think his name's Ross Hamilton, but he's got a really great presentation on YouTube where he goes through all the mounds across Ohio, and he shows how they relate to constellations in the sky.
Yep.
They conform to the constellations, like Sagittarius and etc. It's remarkable. Mm-hmm. And the math, there's a lot of high level math involved as well.
Absolutely. Big time. And I think that's what some of the founding fathers, these men of the Society of Cincinnati and whatnot, they recognized. And again, the society, man, they're all descendant from the Templar families, right? And these are descendant from the Normans and the Norse and the Vikings and so on and so forth, right? So I think one of the things I thought that they recognized in these mounds was the, advanced mathematics, which I think they do appreciate that, but I don't think that's the only thing, because I think that these families that I'm speaking of, right, that ultimately become the Society of Cincinnati and the founding fathers and whatnot, that started this country of America, they thought they were descendant from the folks that built those mounds, the giants that built those mounds.
Speaking of, I have some pictures that might be fun for that, and if I can share, I'll show you guys like what the Native Americans, flat out show us. And I don't think that enough people, pay attention to like what we're talking about as far as like the past. Just like you said, there's a lot of armchair historians or whatever, right?
Sure.
And so we got to know, like you've said, like, look at books, look at the Native people, look at all these things that we have available to us.
Look at their culture, right?
Yeah.
Look at their culture.
Yeah. And also, by the way, giants, this is some of these petroglyphs from here in Utah. And I mean, they're also depicting with snakes, and that looks like an Ouroboros underneath, almost like, because above it is a snake. So is that second one down right here? Like, I'm sorry, but this is interesting. Like when we're talking about, and they don't look like regular people.
No, it looks like an Ouroboros for sure.
Yeah. And we're looking at, we know this sign from occultism. What does that do? It brings down power, to the chest area, right? Like, and
I know that sign from an FBI kid diddling report.
Well, that one too. And so in the occult world, it's to bring power to an area, and whether or not it's channeling in or up. And so how that one's going up, it's sending it up, or if it was coming down. And Joseph Smith, that Jehovah parchment, did the same. And this kind of stuff isn't just, like they've perverted it.
Can you go back to that one, Heidi?
Yeah.
I want to say something real quick. So the figure in the middle, very giant like, and also seems to have antlers.
There you go.
Yeah. That suggests to me maybe some Cernunnos, maybe some druid influence, possibly.
Yeah.
I'm not
the
saying
Green Man.
Yes.
Well,
and then over here to
and
the
it looks like a
left,
bug, like they
Yes.
said in those crashes that they were like bugs.
Yeah. Insect like. Yeah. And I've heard that. I mean, I went deep into ufology, as you know, Heidi. Like I cut my teeth on ufology, and you do see a lot of those stories that where people claim to have come across or had interactions with something that was very much insect like, to the point where some people have claimed that they were kind of in a chimera like way. They were some main deity was like creating an army of like these biological robots, and they chose to make them insect like.
And look at the
I don't want no
eyes
drone insects. I'm out.
and like how they're like this, and then it comes down to like a pointed. It is very insect like, and it
Well, you can
brings
see
into
some
question.
insects right around the head and the horns there.
Oh, this one on the left, guys. I mean, it looks like it's got an insect face.
Looks like ET, doesn't it?
Tongue.
It looks
Maybe,
like ET, actually. Yeah.
Maybe Short Circuit. Maybe Johnny Number 5.
Yep.
And I'd like to point out about this one on the left real quick, and then I'm done. That looks just like one of the ones from the Nazca line. This is awesome. We all have something to say about this.
Oh, I was thinking that too. We were just talking about Nazca stuff.
And the Pope or the Catholic guys wear this on their robe.
I was going to ask you: is this on a wall, or is this on the ground like the Nazcas?
No, this is on the petroglyphs wall of. Let me tell you guys.
I thought we were kind of looking at a Nazca situation.
Sago Canyon, Utah. So this is why I brought it with us today, and to tell you guys too, with the insect thing, think of what they said almost ruined Utah. What was it, JJ?
The bees.
The crickets.
No, it's the bees that are ruining. Oh, the bees are ruining. The hives are ruining America. My bad. I got it mixed up.
But the Mormon crickets, and what came and saved us. This is why our state bird is the seagull, because the seagulls supposedly came and ate the crickets and saved the day. Well, it really makes you question, if we're talking about bug entities here, what the hell is happening? That's kind of
you've got it all here, guys. You have snake iconography, like serpent mound type of stuff, and there were UFO like objects in the sky. That last one you showed, Heidi, has it all.
There's another one with UFOs. These are all from the Sago Canyon petroglyphs, just to remind people. So look at the horns and like all of the different sizes of everybody. Like this one's like tiny. Look at this. And it's floating and it doesn't have legs. There's one that definitely, this is like a giant. I mean, these are giants. And then these little people like down here. I mean, it's very interesting. And there's another one that has UFOs. And look at these eyeballs. I mean, again, we've got antennas or something happening here, on all of these. That's not a hairdo.
This might be their depiction of the star people.
It's very strange. And the snakes are everywhere. And this one is getting bitten. Look, it's biting him. Like it's on the shoulder. So that's
kind of the middle of nowhere. That's over on the eastern side of the state, huh?
Super weird. Yeah. This is,
I was looking where up geographically speaking.
And then these are see how this one's bringing down into this area. And then if it was going the opposite way, it would be bringing it out. And so again, occult magic. This is like magic. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was commenting on that report as well. I think there's some of that Dedlin report is rooted in occultism. Those symbols are.
Right. Absolutely. And look at this, like one arm and horns and antennas and another bug, like, scorpion type thing. I'm like, what is happening? But so what does Ezekiel describe the angels as wheels? The wheels,
When's this these petroglyphs supposedly date back to? Because when's the wheel invented?
But I'm talking about wheels as in, he says the angels were.
No, I hear you on that one. I'm just saying,
maybe.
Like, what's the mainstream argument for this wheel situation, though?
I don't even know. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know where the heck that came from. So let's date these guys. That's one thing I forgot to do.
You know what I mean?
And
Because like I don't know the exact date of the wheel's invention, but I feel like these petroglyphs probably predate that era.
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
sure. Yeah. Like let's put time frame. Okay,
I'll
so
look
they're
up the
saying
wheel.
okay. It's saying the oldest back to 2000 to 6000, I think it says. I'll let you keep looking at that. But as I
I
go
think
through
it's
these,
generally accepted around 2500 BC because it's around the same time some of the older
that's not
Adena
it.
mounds are supposedly date back to.
So
Yeah.
they're saying the earliest evidence of the wheel goes back to 3500 BC.
35, okay.
And I think
That
that
seems
those
reasonable.
I think those Sego Canyon go back to 6000.
Right. They got to be older than that, right? Yeah.
It
Yeah,
said
they're older.
2000 to 6000. Yeah.
Yeah, there you
So,
go.
I mean, who even knows? But
Right.
it was so weird. And there was another, I think I passed it already, that looked like it was like a spacecraft. But
I
definitely the
saw that one.
same.
Yeah. It was, and it even
Yeah.
had like, it was round, but it had things erupting from it.
This
Yeah.
is it. Yeah.
Not like a sun because it's got like a something to it's got like a
No.
donut shape to it, right?
And
Guys,
this
I'm
weird.
seeing logos in here, like modern day logos that look like
Oh,
they
the
used to-
X. Did you
Yeah.
see the X?
Yeah, I've seen the Monster Energy drink and I've seen the Bitcoin logo.
Yep, there's Monster.
There's
Yep.
the, and here's the X right here.
Yeah, there's
Oh, the
X.
Bitcoin logo was inside the sun, wasn't it?
Yes.
I'll go back. Yeah.
Or the UFO or whatever that is.
There we go.
Yep, that looks like a Bitcoin
Holy
logo.
smokes, you're right. That is the Bitcoin logo.
Yep. And it's just
What's up with these
strange.
horses over there? I thought horses were introduced by the Spaniards in the 1500s.
I don't know. Joseph
mean to
Smith
tell me
said they
that's
were
not right?
around. Jeez. And they're just the full, like the focus on the bugs and the snakes. I mean, that is so weird.
Heidi, what do you
know?
think about that swirl insignia? Do you think that's
Oh.
a portal?
Well, so speaking of, I brought some other fun stuff because we've been talking so much about Howard Hughes and everything, you know. I wanted
Yeah.
to bring, we talked on our last one that's going to drop tomorrow's Wednesday, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Tomorrow. And we were talking about archways and natural portals. Now, this is me and my husband at Zion, but
I was about to
this
say, is
is
this
one
Bryce
of them.
Canyon?
Yeah, this one is Zion Canyon.
Zion Canyon.
And then there's more of them. Oh, not that one though. That one's for
That's
later.
a secret underground base.
Oh,
gosh.
Heidi, you're not supposed to show us the dumbs.
I know. Here's another one. Like, look at these. Look at this one.
Oh,
this looks
yeah.
almost like it's coming down and out, like it's a receiving shootout. I mean,
Oh,
that's
wow.
just weird.
I've adventured around these parts, and that's
Yeah,
when you were
yeah.
getting to the Grand Canyon stuff earlier, Tim. That's what I was saying. Like
Mhm.
when I was getting out with they were going into Mormon country, right? You know, Smithsonian.
This is all
John Wesley
Zion.
Powell.
Uh-huh.
You know, they were in foreign territory of the Mormons. The Mormons had already, in my opinion, looted whatever was here before that. You know what I mean? They'd already got. They probably put in the old school deep underground military base, the cave, before.
There we go.
the modern
That's
day
what I
version.
was going to ask you guys. Do you think? And I'm sure there's something like this. There's got to be, but
Little Saturn cube here.
Is there
it is very skewed like.
Is there an underground bunker Vatican style library in Utah that the Mormons
yeah.
procure?
About
yeah.
many. And I brought also some stuff about tunnels, but they also have like at least known 4 to 5 vaults. And that's why I put the other photo is that genealogical vault isn't just for genealogy. They also have it's for whatever, and it's on lockdown. I mean, this is the whole side of a mountain. So
Well, when they were revamping Temple Square, Heidi, correct me if I'm wrong, it was about 10 years ago, I think. And when they did the full blown remodel and they had torn up like the streets, they'd expose the
you could see
the underground tunnels. They
Not
had
only-
huge. You could drive vehicles, bus size tunnels you could drive underneath Temple Square.
And they still
down there.
use them. They said they use golf carts, and they have, and people were joking, but they're not joking about the tunnels. I did a whole show on Mormon tunnels, and not just Mormons, but Utah tunnels, but how they use this. And there's a whole grid system. You know, that's how all of Salt Lake is. It's for this reason, so that they could use these, and they still use them to this day. And the Mormon Secret Service, even though that sounds funny, it's real. They said they will literally shoot your ass. I mean, and they're the ones that let people in and out of a lot of these places and drive them in their golf carts to get them places, miles and miles.
Do they have the keys?
They
Heidi,
do.
that looks like a straight up military base owned by a
I'm
country.
Oh,
telling
for
you.
sure.
A
Well,
country's military.
they are a country. If you ask them, they
That's-
are a country.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It seems like
Yeah.
they've got like they're like, yeah, we'll play along with being inside of the United States and being a part of
What?
that whole thing, but it seems like they secretly and realistically they have their own thing going on. It seems like
Well,
I think that's 100% true. I think it's very Anglo influenced, if you ask me, with the Brigham Young version of Mormonism. But the coup
this
that
is
went on
Bryce.
there,
Yeah.
yeah, Bryce, that's a fun canyon to explore too.
Yep.
But
There's so much. Yeah.
All right, so
I would-
what's the story here? Are those natural like holes in the canyon, or is that just
So
did
they
they
say,
bore
but,
those for the road?
Well,
but
supposedly weathered,
also,
right?
right. They're supposedly sandstone weathered, but look at this one. Want to talk about melted things
That looks pretty
and
funky.
whatnot? Fantasyland, the canyon, and they look like they're melted, and so does Snow Canyon. This is Devil's Slide, and this
I was
is
about to
right,
call it Devil's Backbone, but that's a good name for it
right,
too.
yeah, Devil's Slide, and I mean, it's huge. This doesn't do it really any justice at all. But we were talking about
Is that the canyon where dude cut his arm off because he got stuck in between stuff?
Oh,
You know, 127
I've
hours.
seen that movie. I know what you're talking about. James
I-
Franco.
Yeah, James Franco. I've explored around that same area. That I'm pretty sure that last one you showed with the archway was from that same general vicinity. But to
But
be
look
fair,
at
Tim,
how-
on the Mormons,
how
if we're
weird that
gonna
is.
if we're gonna talk about anything with them regarding the power structure of America, though, too, is the Union would not have won the Civil War without the support of the.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hmm.
Yep. The support of the Mormons. Yep. He's going to come back. So,
And I haven't
Yeah.
heard that before either. That's interesting.
yep. I hopefully he'll be here any second.
Yeah. Well,
My
There
back?
he is.
There you
You're
are.
back.
I was
So-
just saying to be fair on the previous note about the Mormons, the Union would not have won the Civil War had without the backing and financially speaking specifically of California and the Mormons. That's who started California. So wasn't for the Mormons, we might be called the Confederate States of America or the Confederate States of Europe America, because that's really who was backing the Confederacy was European interests.
Hey Heidi, you were talking
Absolutely.
about
This is here in Utah. This is the Spiral Jetty. I wanted to bring like all these weird phenomena that we have here. And the weird thing is between, okay, so the natural portals, and we know about Crowley in the desert. And then you start talking about, okay, we have a salt lake here that is actually chemically the most similar to the Dead Sea of anything else, but that halite
Oh, that's
salt in the
interesting.
Great Salt Lake, this is what me and Nick were talking about today, is this halite salt, and it's so weird, and that you can't. That's not it. You can't.
Can you bring that
use it
last one
either.
up, the portal again?
Yeah,
You can't use it for anything, right? You can't even like desalinate it, right?
No, because it's got arsenic in it. It's got
Yeah.
arsenic in it. And then when you're talking about, I want to see what's over here. Look at this.
Oh,
This
what is
looks
that?
like a real live Ouroboros. This
Is that
is
sand?
sand around a rock formation in Utah. These are like
That's
so
wild.
weird. I'm going to go through this really fast so we can wrap this piece up, because I just thought it was so
Yeah, that's
strange.
James
But
Franco
then,
Canyon.
yeah, and then when we talk about the Great Salt Lake, right? Like I put in a funny one here that.
Well, can you
nobody's
bring up
ever-
that portal one again? Because that thing was
Which one
huge. 'Cause
is-
you had
sorry,
two
this
two
one?
dudes
The
in the middle of
Zion?
it.
Zion.
The
the sand?
swirly portal.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd never seen that before, and you have two dudes in the middle
Yeah,
of it that
neither.
seem to.
Yeah.
They got like
I mean,
I don't know. I'm assuming they're not dwarfs. So I mean, the context of
No.
size for that thing, that's pretty enormous.
there we are. Yeah.
No,
So-
the
She's talking about
swirly
the one
portal.
on the beach. The
Oh,
one on the
the
beach.
spiral jetty.
Yeah,
Oh,
the spiral. There you go. I apologize. The
Sorry.
spiral jetty. Was that? Is
spiral
that?
jetty's right close by out towards the great, like a little past. And then the weird thing about this is this was built in. So I pulled this up so you guys could hear about this.
I think it's
It was
fascinating.
a land art construction took place on it in 1970s and considered to be most important work by sculptor Robert
Oh.
Smithson. And so
There you go.
he just built it for no reason, apparently.
go.
But
Okay.
what did I tell you guys about how the spiral?
Yeah.
So they're pulling down the energy to bring it into this
Mhm.
area. So this is very occultic if people really
I agree.
knew.
Heidi,
And
I
this
agree, and
Joseph
is
Smith.
you answered my questions whether or not it was a natural formation or not, and and again, it does seem
No.
like you ain't building this without a purpose. That's huge.
But all around it, so this is the other reason why me and Nick were talking today about not just the Great Salt Lake, but the salt that surrounds the whole area of that is they have the salt flats. So this is
Yep.
me. This is Heidi Naked. I was actually in a magazine for like body painting and they cut your head off and everything, so nobody's ever going to know who I am. But this really famous guy, well, if you look at the bottom of this, because there was hundreds of girls involved in this, but look at the bottom, it's all salt. This is the only reason why I put this photo in here, to show how far back it goes and how far to the sides. It's these are the salt flats and some of this salt that we're talking about. And then when you think about the alchemical purposes of salt, and not necessarily, this is why I called Nick, not necessarily with, darker stuff and magic, but more witchcraft. It's for what? Purity. And then it can have a reaction with other things where we also know in Utah is the biggest copper mine, open pit copper mine, period, in the world, owned by the crown, like JJ was talking about, by
Not the crown, but the crown.
King. Yeah, the King of England now. I was going to say the Queen, but
he's a queen. He's still a queen. It's fine.
Yeah, same thing, same thing. And so I was like, okay, what's going on here? And then I said, well, Nick, what else did you find on AI about it? And he said, well, it's not only the fact that you can't use the salt because of the arsenic, there's a ton of lithium in there. And I was like, okay, so remember how I kept saying the Mormons had something up on, they're getting cashed in on not just their keys of knowledge, but also I believe, their ownership of some of the top minerals that they need. And they just broke ground. And I thought I'd put that photo in here of my husband works there at Rio Tinto and at this open pit copper mine. And if not, we got to Google it, because it's just, they say you can see it from space. Now, I don't believe,
I'll tell you something about copper mines. JJ, I know you know about this too. Like the biggest copper mine in the world used to be Isle Royale. I think it's one of the biggest ones, but they mined Michigan. They mined it. All these people were coming over here well before Columbus.
Yeah, the Phoenicians.
Yeah, among others.
That gives
that's
a good
that's some old stuff, the Phoenicians.
Yep.
That gives a good sense of the depth of the salt. I don't know if you can.
Oh yeah. Well, I was going to say, when you mentioned occultism, didn't they do a lot of rocket engine testing out here?
Yes, they did. And there was actually
that seems pretty occultic,
lawsuit. Right? Yeah, there was actually a lawsuit over it because of the fact that they had downwinders from it. I didn't put that in here, so we'll have to just.
Given the nature of the solid state rocket fuel being created via sex magic ritual by old Marvel Jack Parsons, who by himself may have in fact have been a member of the Society of the Cincinnati, when I was mentioning before about occultism in America and the Society of Cincinnati with Joseph Smith, and then you look at Parsons
worked for Howard Hughes. He worked for Howard Hughes, and I'll tell you that right now.
Puts him right in the mix with all these kind of weird activities. But he descends from a witch from the Salem witch trials as well, much like the Smith situation. You got Salem witch trials, you got Society of Cincinnati. So Parsons' third great grandfather was a captain in the Massachusetts chapter. May have very well have known. Was it Azazel Smith or Zazel Smith?
Azael. Yep.
Azael. Yep. Joseph's grandfather. They may have served together.
Yeah, almost like Azazel. Yep. Wow. This is the copper mine, and it's huge. It's one of the biggest open pit. Now, it may not be the biggest in the world of regular, but in open pit, it is.
Right.
And they just barely passed to be green. They're going to start doing this stuff with lithium and different things too. And so I'm sure that they are switching over. And look at the size, just the sheer size of the wheels here with these people. This gives you an idea of the truck sizes they drive, the big Komatsus, and all of the gold that's mined from here goes straight to Tiffany's. Just so you guys know.
Hey, Heidi, we're talking about the alchemical components of this, and I was reminded of something when you showed that picture of that big salt lick or whatever that's called.
Yeah.
You remember back
Salt flats?
Yeah,
the
back
salt flats.
a long time ago, Heidi and I did a show about alchemy and
Yep.
turning in gold and all that. And we were talking about this substance called ormus. And the way that guy found out about ormus was he was in Phoenix and his ground was so salty, so saline, he couldn't grow a garden. So he went in and tried to alchemically correct the soil so that he could grow plants there. And that's how he came across this substance that science says isn't even a substance. It had the mineral components of it were unknown, and he had it tested and tested.
Huh.
So I think, when you get into salt, minerals, and stuff to do with this planet, I think there's still a lot of unknowns, and I think that alchemy is a big part of that, and just knowing how to do it. And the ancients knew how to harness this stuff.
Sure.
Well, and
Sure.
they're marrying into at this time. So how we get the Mormon tie, they're marrying into these Micmac communities. They're bringing their witchcraft from back east and whatnot, and further than that, back in the old world, right?
Well, I
And
would argue
so,
it's already here, right? Because if you look at the Micmac, when I was saying look at the natives' cultures, I was saying earlier too, I'd be curious to see the how closely related the Cherokee are to the Micmac because they look a lot alike. And people
Right.
think the Cherokee came from Oklahoma or the South. They actually came from what we now call New England.
They came from Iroquois stock up north.
Yep. So,
Mm.
yeah, I have some Cherokee heritage that goes back to the Southern style, but in learning that I've learned that there was a whole band of Cherokee in my bootleg Vermonter, my native state of Vermont. So I had no idea.
Some of the origins for Cherokee, like the name Cherokee, it goes back to a couple of words, and there's some contention here, but some of the words that comprise Cherokee mean people of the caves, or people in the caves, or cave people.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of there's some sort of origin story to that regard, right? From underground folks, right?
Yeah. So I think that's interesting too when you think about the cave's role in alchemy, Plato's cave, and all that.
Well,
sure.
and
And
Cherokees are carriers of the RH null, and that is such a rare blood type. Just so you guys know, the very rare blood type
they're
RH
unique.
null, not just negative. I'm not talking about RH negative. I'm talking about RH nothing. And there is such a rare percentage of them. It's called, wait for it, golden blood.
There we go. RH null. I've never heard of this.
Yep. And I'm reading this off of just regular Google right now because I did a big thing on this where I got nerdy on my cabbage baby stuff. But the name, the name RH null blood type is the rarest blood type in the world with less than 50 known carriers, period. But many of them are Cherokee, to your point.
That's insane.
And if you just look at their culture, they're unique, and they're very similar cultures to the Micmac as well. But if you look at the Micmac, they incorporated the Sinclair family, Clan Sinclair's crest as their national flag, as the tribal flag. So which incorporates the cross of St. George there, which is the St. George or St. Andrew. I'm mixing up my Templar flags tonight. Which one's the Templar cross there, Heidi? So the cross of St. George or cross of St. Andrew? I always forget that.
Down in southern Utah?
No, the Micmac flag is
the Micmac flag. Oh,
incorporates
the it's St. George. I think it's St. George.
You're right.
Because
that's what
they named towns after it in Utah, right? St. George.
Well, the Micmacs incorporated that in their flag. You look at the Sinclair crest, and that incorporates the Templar stuff too, because the Clan Sinclair is a big part of not only the Templar, they're a big part of American history with General Anthony St. Clair.
And Martinists go right into those. Once again, it goes right back to where I always say that it was. And I'm telling you guys, and think of this. Do you remember when everything came out with the weird, let's see how I can say this. The adreno metal. Okay.
Yes.
And so everybody kept calling it the gold juice. And as I was thinking about it, I was doing this study and I found this golden blood. And then I started sitting there thinking, like, okay, what happens when you spin blood is the plasma rises to the top and it's gold, period.
Right. That's what they call it, right?
Absolutely. When we're talking about this and what percentage of Cherokee people are one of the few percentage of Native Americans that have naturally green eyes. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Like,
there's something more to the Cherokee thing, and I'm not going to definitively
The-
say that they were one of the lost tribes, but they certainly came from
no.
somewhere else
well,
originally.
don't rule out the Mi'kmaq. I think they have a lot of the same origins
Right.
between them and the Cherokee.
And
Right. But and they
And
have the
again, it points to the
stories.
Templars.
They have the stories of the sky gods coming down and impregnating their women. There's a story about this from the Native American people about indigo children. So if you guys look into this, that they would come down and they would take their daughters and put them up on the highest mound or mountain.
Sounds like an ancient alien cargo cult.
Yeah,
Please continue.
and take them up the mountain and be like, here's our virgin, of course, always. And so, like, here, take her, and she'd come back knocked up, but there was no guys up there. So,
And that sounds a lot like
Immaculate Conception, huh?
Mount Hermon,
Right.
and Watchers of Genesis 6, or
That's
the Book
right.
of Enoch, if you wish.
The Book of Enoch. Yep.
Similar.
Absolutely. And it got so brutal, actually, and the girls described it, that it wasn't just some nice fantasy love. The reason why there was an uprising and getting rid of these things is because the sexual deviancy was so bad and so brutal. And then on top of it, the pregnancies, oftentimes they didn't survive the birth. So, their stories of like vampiric type births from these things and ripping mothers apart, not just down below. So, like, out of the womb. And so this is like a scary, gruesome tale. But when you put it all together with the knowledge of the Book of Enoch and all this other weird stuff, you're like, oh, what's happening over there? Then they got those drawings.
Yeah, there's you see there's a couple of like bullet points, or I don't know what else to call them, but a couple key things that you see throughout history where it seems like just about every culture around the world has these, and it's giants and it's star people or your legends of some sort of like a sexual interaction with the star people. Like,
alien, giant, something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cargo cult.
I was gonna say, I mean, you're right. They do describe these things, but again, I view all these things in the capacity as ancient alien cargo cults. What these folks are describing, they do believe. It's just not accurate in a cargo cult capacity, where the cargo cults in South Pacific are to this day are building wooden aircraft and doing silly dances around a fire, waiting for GI Joe to drop more cargo on them. Literal cargo, food and supplies, but that day will never come, no matter how many dances. You know what I mean? It's not going to be contingent upon the dances of the model aircraft they make. So
why
you apply that to our modern society, the stuff they're doing, right? With these cults, it's the same thing. It's just applied slightly different in a modern context.
So
and then you look at the names they name these things, like Zion, Valley of the Gods, Lady in the Bathtub, like all these weird names for these canyons. And then on top of it, one other thing is I found that all of the temples are built at 111 point something, very close, either like 111.6, 111.9, 111 point. Where's my other one for Salt Lake? This makes me look like such a nerd. 111.54 west for the meridian, and then for the other part 40, always between 39 and 40. All of the temples are built on the ley lines.
Yep.
So I was like, well, and when I was sharing that with Nick, because he looked up the one in Salt Lake, because I couldn't find it. They show you all the other ones, and then I was like, just not going to show that one. What? Like, why can't I find this? So Nick found it, and I'm like, okay, this makes total sense, because I mean, we know that 11 plus even 111 adds up to 3. Like, there's all kinds of stuff there. So
they knew about these. The ancient people knew about what we call today ley lines. I don't know that they looked at them the same as we do today. And I know most modern people probably have a hard time with this concept that there's these magical lines, but there's I think they exist. There's energy points, and they seem to be connected. And a lot of these old sites were built right on top of them.
Well, and why would Brigham Young come here and go, you know what? It said he came here and said, this is the place. And he didn't have any scouts or anything. He just got here and was like, this is it. Okay. It's completely.
You mean to tell me God didn't send him there, Heidi?
He did. He did. But guess what? It's uninhabitable.
That was a close one.
It's uninhabitable. It's got a salty lake, 10 times saltier than the ocean.
It makes no sense, right? It makes
The
no
mountains
sense.
are crazy. You can't farm here. We have 3 winters. I swear on God, it snowed 2 weeks ago. Like, I'm not kidding on that. It snowed 2 weeks ago. I mean, and then the summers are brutal too. And then you get insects and all that destroying their crops. I'm like, what was it then that he saw here that was so special? It had to be the energy from the ley lines and stuff that you're talking
Well,
about.
I think that's the stuff that's passed down generationally, besides languages and just everything else that's passed down through these bloodlines, the mathematics, etc. Is this understanding of what the Mormons involve themselves in, like necromancy, and and it's the knowledge of well, I think that's what it boils down to, because when you're
And
burying these,
geomancy.
well, when you're burying these giant humans, well, I think again, some of the knowledge Brigham Young has and Joseph Smith is comes to the society and whatnot, and when some of the knowledge I think they understood was the knowledge that whatever it was burying these formerly giant humans that I believe they thought they descended from at the base of these Adena mounds, specifically that type of mound, are built on these ley lines in these very key spots and what I like to call some sort of energy nodes, because you can look at the U.S. geological surveys and see that there are differences in energy around some of these Adena sites, comparatively speaking, from the surrounding areas. So, and that's not exclusive to all mound sites, but these Adena mound sites with the giants at the base of them, that is exclusive. And I think that's part of this kind of necromancy these families pass down.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
bones and the blood and all of that. And that's why it doesn't work as good anymore for the Goyim, because they're not spilling blood anymore. But you bet your ass that top is, and I don't care what anybody says. Like, they know.
I think they 100% knew. I think there was a great knowledge of geomancy and how to use the earth. And I think too, like with some of the mound sites here, not only do they reflect the stars, not only are they probably on earth energy points and ley lines, but I mean, they seem to be crafted in a way to like sigils almost, where they're going to power up the land, like gather energy, but also like power it up somehow and store.
Well, that's what those circles were too.
I was gonna say, I think as Greg Little, Dr. Greg Little, the mound doctor on Twixter there, he's done a whole survey of mounds from years ago. He posts all these pictures and stuff and maps and everything else on his Twitter feed. I highly recommend folks check that out. Tim, are you familiar with Greg Little?
Absolutely. Yes.
I assumed as much, but I just want to make sure. So we just had him on the Occult Rejects. I think it's probably publishing here soon.
Oh, cool.
But he explained their religion of these specifically, again, these Adena mound builders. And again, it's just silly that we call them mound builders. Even the name Adena is rooted in the Society of Cincinnati, named it that. Not those folks that built these mounds did not call themselves the Adena. But there's probably more. What I'm saying is there's probably more to even the name Adena that I don't understand, as far as some sort of esoteric or occult reason they use that. But nonetheless,
I think that they picked Cincinnati so as a city because of where it was. I think because it already had that geomancy energy there, because the ancient people, I think Cincinnati is an ancient city.
It is, yeah.
The Society of the Cincinnati, who Cincinnati gets its namesake from, came through. Washington, Henry Knox, those guys came through, and they saw basically an ancient civilization and said, we're going to build right on top of this. I think that's how we get cities like Cincinnati.
Well, I think it gets even deeper. I mean, you're spot on in that kind of surface level assessment of how these things happen. But I think they didn't just find. What I'm saying, it goes deeper. They didn't just find it, though. I think this is knowledge passed down to them. So, Cincinnati. The Cincinnatus is a man who lived 500 BC. That's the man who they venerate, right? Who took control of the Roman Republic and gave power back to the people. George Washington did the same thing twice, just like Cincinnatus, and he thought he was a reincarnation of Cincinnatus. So
right now, I've heard two different accounts on Cincinnatus. I've heard some people, like you said, they venerate him to the fullest extent, and then I've also heard that he actually did not fight for the rights of the people or the plebeians or whatever they were called.
The plebes.
Plebes.
Well, so he fought for the Roman Republic and the Roman citizens. It's a slightly different kind of. Not everybody was a citizen of Rome that lived in Rome, right?
Right.
But what he was trying to do was reinstitute a republic, and again, it was. These contrary positions, you'll find contrary positions on George Washington and everything else these days. I think a lot of these things are rooted in what I'm talking about as far as the civil war that goes on within the society. But they all come from this. It's all one big family feud, in my opinion, and they all come from again. I think these giant folks. So Cincinnatus to them was not only this Roman Republic leader, but he was, I think, a giant. He was an ancestor to them. So there's this 8-foot statue of Cincinnatus on the landing point of what was known as Low Santiville at the time. The society changed it to the city of Cincinnati, but it was known before that as the city of Low Santiville. And there's the landing spot where the society landed. There is a 8-foot statue of Cincinnatus. So I think, or, I think maybe 7.5 foot, maybe. So I think that's a accurate depiction of their kind of what they think of who Cincinnatus was.
Yeah, where Cincinnati is, I think that was an area that was built up by the mysterious mound builders. In fact, the Native Americans said it was built by giants. That specific location that Cincinnati sits on today was built by giants. So I think that this feng shui was already there. There was this magic geomancy in this place, and they knew about it, and they wanted to utilize that. Kenneth Grant talked about earth chakras and power zones, and he was talking about the Devil's Lake, Wisconsin area, but I think that's all over. It's not just in Wisconsin. So these mounds are tied up in geomancy, specifically the Turner group. I don't know if you know about this, JJ, but the Turner group mounds, you can look them up. They were already there when Cincinnati was being formed. So I can pretty much prove that they built that city on top of a mound site.
Oh, I could do you one better, sir. So you can go to Cincinnati today, go visit Fountain Square. And Fountain Square is built on top of a huge Adena mound that used to sit there in the center of the old city, like you're describing. So Cincinnati is known as the city of 7 hills. It's the new Rome. Rome's known as the city of 7 hills.
Right. Adena is delicate or gentle and referring to a pampered nation of Babylon. Just FYI.
Yeah.
It's the feminine. Again, feminine.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said why they use that name.
That's it right there. That's a home run right there. That's exactly what they were thinking with these names and stuff. And I love the 7 hills aspect because they were obsessed with Rome. They were obsessed with Cincinnatus. They were obsessed with the city itself. Rome and the 7 hills. Rome was established by the Etruscans, and
if I can argue
a group of sorcerers.
They're all these. If you don't think the founding fathers were wizards, you are wrong, sir. All these men.
I think they were. That's what
wizards.
I'm saying. Yeah. I think they absolutely were wizards, and they were obsessed with wizard bloodlines, and
they still are. This
has been going on a very long time. This wizardry we're referring to is the reason why it's been going on a very long time. So this is an ancient freedom of religion argument between these same families and these same opposing forces, right? That want to quell their wizardry, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So on my search for the keys of because a friend of mine, I don't think he wants to be named yet, sent me some AI stuff about keys and the West and the people that hold the keys of the West and the Mormons and all this weird stuff. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to study this, but it's AI, right? So I haven't been able to find a grasp on it, and I need to talk to him more. But while I was studying it, guess what came up? Something weird when it was your Society of the Cincinnati. So they have
in their ugly head.
Yeah, program right now as we speak in the current day and age for charitable things for homeless youth. And guess what the hell it's called? The Keys program.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he who holds the keys. Oh, you mean the youth that you're stealing and God only knows what's happening there? Oh.
Again, I would argue Mormonism is an offshoot, right? Because it starts in Fayette, New York, on a mound, and named after Lafayette, the French chapters society, French side of the chapter, or French chapter. I can't
actually. Yeah, can I? The
French chapter of the Society of Cincinnati. There we go. I couldn't get it out for a minute.
Lafayette. He was a member of the Cincinnati, right? He was close friends with Washington.
Best friends. Named his son George Washington Lafayette. Yes, sir.
Yeah. You know that Lafayette was influenced big time by the German spiritualist mystic Franz Mesmer, right? Or Mesmer, I should say, an occultist. Lafayette
for sure,
was very influenced by him, and Washington was sending Mesmer letters Jefferson
even
knew about him too.
I was gonna say
even
all these dudes were
yeah.
into some wizardry. Again, you know, as you're pointing out.
They were, and look, this is here we go right here. I'm gonna show you that this is.
Francis Bacon too. He's
I
talking about the keys, and guess what the keys
Well,
were
that
for him?
but
Gods.
JJ, I know what you're gonna say, or I know you've got things to
Ah,
say. I know you got things to say about
that's
this.
an ancient ziggurat if you ask me.
That's
But go
okay.
ahead.
Thank you. We're on the same page.
yeah,
We're talking about the wizardry of the founding fathers,
yeah.
and this is what George Washington put on a hill or a mound or an ancient site in Alexandria, Virginia. And normal people, Christians don't do this. Normal, good old Christian people don't do this. This is something these guys were on a different level, and they
Right.
were very much in tune with the ancient arts and
Well, what
esoteric
about the
sciences.
giant G Freemason sign right there? I mean,
I was gonna
like,
say I don't disagree. That is an interesting building. Have you ever been to it?
No, but I've heard that this tower is closed off to the public.
No, you can go in there.
Up in there.
Yeah, and
So
they have
you
like a four. They have like it's like one of the only like non non whatever. It's the elevator goes at an angle. What do they have a fancy word for it?
okay, but what was that used
nonlinear.
for? What were they?
It's even weirder than they got some architectural silly word for it. I think
Oh,
that's a good word for it, non-linear.
Hmm.
It's not like a huge angle, but it goes at a weird angle, right? And they
mhm.
crisscross. They have two different. I think they crisscross in an X midway through that tower, but it's an interesting place. Now you can go up there to the top. I was up there.
Okay,
Myself and
cool.
Recluse were up there, host of the farm,
Oh,
maybe about a
wow.
year ago. Maybe
It's.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this is for me. This draws heavily from a pagan
Well,
temple.
because
that's
they build it,
Babylonian there, right? The ziggurat, right? That goes back to ancient Babylon, doesn't it?
The
yeah, they
ziggurat
build it
does.
on the temples on the hills so that the blood can go down the steps. I mean,
Mm.
there's a whole thing it can go into the earth like afterward. That's what they say.
Right.
And
But
Jefferson
oh, go ahead.
himself, I remember reading something that he wrote. He said that the Illuminati, because he knew about the 1776 Illuminati over there in Bavaria, he said that they would have no reason to have the need to be secret or hold secrecy over here in America. He wrote a letter that was like saying, yeah, if they were over here, they'd have no problems. Everything would be cool. They wouldn't have to be secret. And like the whole tone of the letter was that basically like that the Illuminati would have been welcomed here in America. Like, oh, this is what we're about over here in this country.
Hmm.
You don't have to hide. You
Uh,
don't have to hide anything. You can put it on top of
right.
a hill, just like this. You can just
I
put
I
it on the
hear what you're
ground.
I hear what you're saying. I don't think the idea of the Illuminati shouldn't be ignored because there's a fellow by the name of Theodore Roos who started the OTO who actually reignited the literal Weishaupt Bavarian Illuminati. So I've seen the references from Jefferson. You make some good points there, Tim. I've seen those references. I've seen them from Washington as well. And
Mhm.
I'll offer you this perspective as a counter. George Washington didn't ask to be recognized as a god. George Washington didn't ask for someone to build him a Babylonian ziggurat in Alexandria, Virginia, in his honor, and he didn't ask for anyone to build him a giant dick statue in the city that he founded. But there is an argument to be made. This is part of that element of the Society of Cincinnati that wanted him to be king.
Right.
They wanted George to stay on and not retire as president and be king, and then he said nope and give him the power back to the people. And then he was poisoned roughly 6 months later, if you ask me, on July 4th, 1799. Can make a strong circumstantial argument around that. And then the next president of the Society of Cincinnati, Alexander Hamilton, who took over that day on July 4th, was the big meeting where Washington handed power over of the society to Hamilton, and then Hamilton's murdered 4 years later, a little less than 4 years later. So by Aaron Burr, another member of the society. So there's these factions, and one faction wanted Washington to be king, and Washington
Mhm.
said that's not going to happen. And they're the folks that, in my opinion, paint the apotheosis of George Washington inside the Capitol Rotunda. They're the folks that build this giant ziggurat building you were just showing us, and then they're
I
the folks that
thought
build the monument.
I thought Washington had a hand in the ziggurat in Alexandria, though. I thought he kind of had that built and picked the location and stuff like that. I could be wrong.
To my understanding, his lodge that he attended was down there on King Street, there in Old Town Alexandria, right near his one of his favorite bars, which is actually down the street from his own bar, He didn't even hang out he had his birthday party down the street at different people's bar,
Well,
right?
okay. Well, we'll say this though: these forces, though, are present in this country, whether or not they're embodied by Washington himself. That's up for debate. But these forces are
Sure.
here, and I'd say that this kind of breaks into the bigger, older plot of One World Order, just to call it that term, because these guys were part of these older orders. Like you said, I think Washington, his bloodline maybe goes back to the Templars, actually, and so you've got that in the mix, and you've got Rosicrucians in the mix, and you've got these guys are clearly working with old occult doctrines. They go back to Babylon, Sumeria, Greece, royals, and I think, like, okay, for example, Manly P. Hall, he has a book called Secret Destiny of America, and he kind of speaks to this. He speaks to this order of secret men who have been at work throughout the ages in governments all over the place, but here as well. And they, I mean, I don't know. We're basically on their timeline. You know what I mean? Like we live on their timeline, like that. And I'll wrap it up with that. Like they hide the truth from us, and we believe whatever version they decide to tell us. And I'll just end it there.
No, you're spot on, Tim. I mean, we do live on their timeline. Again, it's varying. It's not one timeline. There's a mix of all sorts of power factions. I think that play into this mix of how people perceive history and time and whatnot. But yeah, I think the One World Order faction is present, and I call it the anti-liberty Anglo-American faction of the Society of Cincinnati. That's represented.
That's too big, JJ. We got to come up with an acronym.
Got to go AACC, Ancient Alien Cargo Cult style with it. Yeah. So what you're describing to me is all this occultism is just all this ancient alien cargo cult ideas just being kind of passed down through these occultic orders over the years. I'm not going to. I think George Washington believed in some sort of ancient alien cargo cult belief system. I don't. Again, so Greg Little was describing the mound builders as having an ancient alien cargo cult belief system, no different than the folks over there in ancient Egypt, as far as catapulting your spirit into the same star system that everyone venerates, Sirius, right? So everyone's real serious about Sirius, the Rosicrucians you were describing. So it is this continued, generational thing, I think, that goes on. But therein lies the problem with liberty. You put your finger on the target there of the issue, I think, really.
I mean,
what is liberty?
America is our name, but Amaruca, Amruca, is literally translated as land of the plumed serpent. And what was all over with all those weird alien things and the snakes,
Amaruca, I would argue that comes from the Amorites, a branch of the Canaanites, the Amorites. Their principal deity was Amaru.
That's Amaru. To the Mayans and the Incas and stuff.
I'm saying they came over here. I think that because I mean, if you look in old texts, I'll just pull the Bible for instance. You had Joshua, Caleb, who were said to have driven out these people from the Middle East, and then I've traced them through. They were pushed out further by the Romans even later, and they were pushed all the way up to the end of Africa and maybe even the tip of Iberia, where there's a jumping off point to North America. So I think the Amorites were pushed off, and they came over here. They made it to the Americas, and their chief deity Amaruca,
and Quetzalcoatl is wrapped up in this, which will be continued with that one because it goes right with it with the Amaruca. Yeah, I think it's Amaruca. Yeah,
that's goddess worship, right?
That's what liberty is, right? Going back to that, liberty is.
There you go. I was going to say, so that's what the society did. They mashed together all these goddess worship because over time, the Vatican has been the latest incarnation of it in the last 2,000 years in our modern sort of history. But over time, there's been the diminishing of this goddess worship and these wizardry. So, and that's what we see now with the Vatican Church. They've been putting that down over every kind of thing you can look at with the Vatican, quote unquote, putting folks down over time. The Dominicans, or whatever time they're out there murking folks, right? It's all because of, the Cathars, for example, it was goddess worship, right? So it is this continued thing. We call them different names, but it's really the same concept. And that's why I think the society with their goddess, they kind of mashed all these characters together, right? They got some Hecate in there.
Speaking of the Pope,
Athena.
I mean, they changed up their mind because he's
being
some
Amaru.
Right. And he's being all about Mary now. His little prayer, I don't know if y'all saw it, but the Pope was like, and no Jesus for you, all about Mary. And I was like, oh,
Well,
and people noticed. I mean, so
Mhm.
I don't think they're hiding as much as they used to. I think it's always been this feminine at the top, like I've said about Mormonism, or hermaphroditic, whichever way you want to pull it, like Twineman says, but all of them talk about the same thing. Look, all these people are talking about keys and either hermaphroditic or feminine energy, gods, goddesses, however you
it's
want to play
Venus
it.
worship. It's
Yeah.
Venus. It's the planet Venus worship, and that's the astrological
Venus
alignment. So you'll see the
Ishtar.
alignments with their architecture, right? You'll see like the Templar architecture, even here in America, like the Newport, Rhode Island Tower, the Newport Tower.
Yeah.
The alignments go. They have little windows. Little tiny little windows where they built in with the rock there. Not
Mhm.
actual pane glass, but just a little area in the rock. Certain times of year, like the equinoxes, Venus shines right through there. It's Venus. It's goddess worship. It's Venus worship.
Venus is Inanna Ishtar.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So these things get different. It's the same concepts.
Always different. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
What I like to
book
joke
breaks
is
it down. There's so many of them. Oh my gosh.
the language has changed, the times changed, but shit just stays the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Venus, I don't remember the full details of this, but somebody mapped this out and it looked pretty well researched. The path of Venus through the night sky creates a pentagram, a star.
But these are
There you
all
go.
like, it just depends on which one they want that day. I postulate that because Joseph was all about Jupiter, and he was all about Jupiter, and some
Well,
are
I
all
think
about Saturn, and some
I think they all have
it's
their
just
own
whatever
flavor,
fits.
right?
Yeah, it's whatever fits your deal or your day.
Well,
But
you also have entities here that go by multiple names.
yes,
Some of these goddesses are the same goddess. Their name has changed depending on people traveling throughout the country.
Oh
and,
yeah, yeah.
the migration of cultures and stuff like that. It's like Ostara, like
That's
the
what I'm saying. We're
Germanic.
sold it.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're sold these are different concepts, though, right? Like we're sold that like these are all different things, but as you're pointing out, it's the same thing.
Yeah, like Easter,
Different language.
Ostara. Yeah. Mhm.
But Jupiter is male, just so you guys know. But
Right.
there is some that are male
Well.
and some that are female. But what I'm saying is it's all
Well,
about whatever.
but if you're
Some of
considering the
them are both.
hermaphroditic aspects, the
Yeah, hermaphroditic.
reconciliation of opposites, right? These ideas, these occult concepts. I mean, I presume you have to have a male deity in that regard, but for some reason, the female deities within these whatever you want to call them bloodlines, they seem to be the main thing. But again, there is some sort of reconciliation of opposites, right?
But don't you think they just hit it? Like it feels to me like this is what they did. Like
Well,
they
that's what I
knew
was
it
going to say. Yeah,
feminine.
they definitely hide
Yeah.
it, right?
And then they took it and they went, we can't have this out front. Like you see it in Mexico. Whose last name do you take? You take your mother's.
Right.
You don't take your.
Well,
I
that's a
mean, you take
Catholic
them
thing,
both.
right? That's
but like,
that's a Catholic thing, right?
but still, you wonder, like, okay, are they patriarching it up so that we'll be let off the course, and we're
Well-
not going to see because that in Mormonism. It all looks patriarchal until when, JJ? Till you get to the second anointing in the
that's what I was
bedroom.
going to say.
Yeah. And then I went, what the hell is this shit? I mean, I'm not a feminist, so I was never upset about the other way around. I'm just confused at why we're lying to people,
Well, and that's the secret, right? So that's what I'm saying. Even when you get boiled down to the Mormon secret, they're doing goddess worship, right?
Yes. Because
Because that's part of the bloodline.
the last blessing you'll ever get if you make it to the top of the top is from a female in your bedroom, and she better be your wife.
I didn't make it there.
Yeah, me either.
I really think a lot of this, guys, goes back to goddess.
I didn't get
worship.
my UFO passport for that journey.
Yeah. Well, and then I postulate too.
Sorry.
All these
Sorry,
people. Sorry, Tim. They
You're
get
good.
kicked out.
I
of
got forced to make alien cargo cult jokes with Heidi about Mormonism. So
Well,
Well,
at the end of the day,
obligated.
all this stuff is related as well. And I think some of the goddesses, let's just assume for a second that some of these goddess deities are real. Like let's just go to the Epic of Gilgamesh, because you've got two there. You've got Lilith and you've got Inanna or Ishtar. They've been around for a very long time, and they are at the top of many different cultures worshipped. What if those are real entities? And what if they are actually
yeah.
behind this modern UFO movement?
I don't doubt, dude. I've told you a million times. I think we're in realms. Steiner talks about it. I think these are certain levels and they'll light their ass off to you which one they are. You're going to get the lowest level first because the highest ones are busy and they don't want to talk to you because you smell bad. But like really, I mean, we know this. And when you get this book, Tim, if you do get this book,
I'll
like
get
this
it.
is
I'm
this
definitely
one
going to get that
says
book.
this says like Aphrodite, Hera in Greece, Egypt, Hathor, Isis, Syria,
Hathor, yeah.
Astarte,
Yeah.
Astarte, Anath, Ashtar, Chemosh, and then it says Mesopotamian, Inanna, Ishtar, Gwart, Beltis. It has all the different breakdowns, even the Mesoamerica, and I cannot say that name. It's like Lazolteotl. I've never heard that once in my whole
I can't
life.
help you out there now. Not,
Yeah.
not
Well,
my not my language.
But they have the
natives,
native,
yeah.
names.
So I found one the other day.
Cobbin,
It's the same goddess as Easter. It's Ostara to the Germanic people. You know,
Sure.
they showed her
Yep.
as this goddess of spring with flowers and like holding a rabbit, or usually there's a rabbit or a
Yep.
bunny in the picture. It's Easter, right? Well,
Right.
they had the Mayans,
Is that
I think,
the Gothic tribes of Germany? Is that what we're talking? The
Ostara.
Gauls?
I don't know if they had Ostara,
The
maybe.
Visigoths?
Maybe, but it goes back to, I think, the Teuton tribes, the Teutonic
Well, this all
tribes.
goes back to Marian worship. I did a whole Mother in Heaven episode, two of them. One I did and one Ed Mabry did. And this stuff, you're right. It's like a very linear graph, clear back to Tammuz, clear back further than that. Like it's really old.
But
in
there's
all
a
the
version
cultures.
here. There's a
Oh yeah,
North
no, it's
American
everywhere.
Easter. Her name is Ixchel. Ixchel, Ixchel. She's the Americas version of Easter, and
Right.
she's shown and depicted with a rabbit, a bunny, oftentimes.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's often that's what these sex cults are, fertility cults, right? So
Fertility.
that's actually I was going to ask you, Tim. So like, what do you think the people were venerating when they constructed what is known as Serpent Mound, which I would argue otherwise, but what is known as Serpent Mound? That's supposedly 5,000 years old, right? You know, if they're in Adams County, Ohio.
yeah,
You familiar with the site?
yes, I am. I'm thinking about how I'm going to
I'll
answer
say
that.
I think we talked about it before, right? When we were on the Fridays there with
Yeah. I think it was a shamanic ritual site, and I think, I think Serpent Mound over here in Ohio was probably modeled after the Serpent Mound in Bashan in the Middle East, and
Okay.
that was King Og of Bashan's land. He's talked about in the Bible. He was said to be a Nephilim. And also there's a Serpent Mound up in Ontario, Canada, that matches the Serpent Mound in Bashan. So
There's
I
a couple in
think
Wisconsin as well that would fit in that category, I believe, as well.
there's a Serpent Mound in Seattle, Washington as well that not many people know about. We know Seattle sits on top of an older city too. A lot of
It does.
these Serpent Mounds, I think, represent these older cultures, and I think there's a shamanic purpose, but I think there's also a deeply sacred vein to this thing where it's meant to diminish the divide between worlds for people.
Well, and on top of it, with the Marian worship, if they can channel the energy from the procreation, which it's all sex magic, they
There
can
you go.
use that. And that's why they want Mormon women continuously pregnant. They want
There you go.
literally, and the polygamy too. That's bullshit. They say, oh, the guys died and this and that. I don't care what it is. And it wasn't just that Joseph was horny. Those angels said that to him. I promise you, this has to do more with like, he probably had the right DNA and they wanted a lot of it, right? Like, go make as many
Yep.
babies as you can, because you don't see any of the
Yep.
elites holding back their baby juice. They all got 12 and 20 kids. Let's be real. Elon don't even know. He's
For
like, I
sure.
don't even know how many kids
Well,
I got anymore.
There's an aspect to these sites and the Serpent Mounds too, where it's like I think that they were trying to harness like the natural, like what we've been talking about, the natural earth energies, but
Sure.
even like atmospheric energies,
The
because
bones.
they say that the egg looking thing in the mouth of the serpent from Serpent Mound,
Yep.
it had an obelisk there at one time, and they said
Yep. And that's a dick statue, right?
It's that, but it was also getting struck by lightning on a pretty,
Yeah.
Right.
all the time. It was always getting struck by lightning. And so that means that the place was being charged metaphysically in some type of a capacity that maybe we don't fully understand.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And
JJ,
but
what do you
look at what we're
think?
talking about here with all these details. That
What do you think
go
about
ahead, Heidi.
Twyman's story about? Okay, he brought up the egg. You know the story about
Ooh.
them bringing up the
Ooh.
egg with Twyman and the. Okay, have you heard this? This gets weird. I'm sorry, people.
No,
I'm familiar with Twyman. I'm not sure if you or some of the folks in the interwebs may not enjoy my opinion, but I'm happy to share it with whatever questions you got.
But the story, I'm just talking about the story that she told. I want to know if this has any other reference, I guess, a point. Is this story about the gods?
No, I'm happy to discuss. Sure.
Yeah, they had this egg and he ejaculated on it and made a baby. It wasn't the butt baby that Crowley wants to do, but it was like the next best thing, right?
Oh,
and this is
it
how
wasn't an anal homunculus.
No, but that's what Crowley says will be the most divine.
Right.
And so, well, I mean, horrific. I can't even imagine how that would feel. But I'm
familiar with that tale. I just I don't her take on the Templar, and that was. I didn't really know her well. We had my bootleg producer, Darren the Brit, was friends with her, and so we exchanged notes. She was always trying to get me on her podcast stuff, but we really disagreed on the Knights Templar.
Hey, do you guys know that story? Just Tracy the egg Twyman? Story? Yeah. Just the egg story with the ejaculation procreation thing where he's talking about the egg. I just didn't know if that had another reference in gods. You know,
yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is I think something like that. Yeah, I agree. There's stuff to that one. I actually kind of would be one of the things I agree with.
Yeah,
I thought it was
Babylonian
with her research on, but she goes some off. I just wanted to preface. She goes kind of off the deep end, or she went off the deep end, in my opinion.
Right.
In her nights, not in her life. I'm saying in her. Well, I'm not again. I'm not trying to make.
We don't know. Trying
to make any personal judgments on her. I'm just saying like her work. She made a lot of unsubstantiated claims upon the Templar and really just recited the Vatican's words on it. Really, I mean, it's
right.
But in regards to their rituals,
just that egg
that
ritual. One, I don't know. I was trying to remember. I thought it was Babylonian, but I thought maybe one of you guys would remember. But it would go to your point if it's the egg and how they tried to bring back the loving egg from space shit when not very long ago. And I saw it and it wrapped me in love. You remember all this? So I was trying to think about this. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been thinking about Ed some more, Ed Cassis and his thoughts. Cause he spent this kind of what I thought was going ancient alien cargo cult, but then he hit me with a Shyamalan twist at the end saying, but they're terrestrials. I was like, oh man, now I like you again. I didn't like you for the last 34 or 35 minutes, but now we're back. We're friends again. It was an odd conversation, but it was an enjoyable conversation. But no, what we're saying, Heidi, with the Twyman's research, I agree with some of those respects, like the egg stuff you're talking about, because that's what I was getting at before. Look at all the details we're discussing: obelisks, eggs, fertility rituals, Easter fertility rituals. Right? These are all the works of a sex cult.
And the only reason
sex magic cult, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Sex
the
cult.
only reason why I bring up the egg is this. Think of this. What if they did it? What if I always postulate this, and I know people don't like the cabbage baby stories, but listen, what if the Brave New World, if they did have just the egg and the ejaculation and made a bunch of people that aren't quite right, like the non-player souls here, like
you're gonna enjoy my theory of Serpent Mound then Heidi, if I haven't shared it with you before, because it falls right in what you're saying. So
okay,
and the idea that all these folks, the ancients, including the founding fathers, and in between all their family folks and these bloodlines, they all have an advanced understanding of mathematics, from the mound building to sailing the seas to drawing maps to every surveying. So for example, my forefather who fought in the Revolution as a spy and a scout for Washington, Abner Vance, somehow he was an uneducated man, but was a surveyor and map drawer. So who taught him? So these things get passed down through bloodlines and whatnot. But in that regard, if you think about how advanced in mathematics these folks are, what else are they doing in the fields of science and mathematics? Do they understand biology? Because you could look at Serpent Mound as being not the horned snake god you do see in representatives like you were talking about.
Oh no, not now. Not on the
sperm and an
clincher.
egg.
There we go.
Go back a sentence.
And
go back a sentence or two.
With Diana of Ephesus, see, India claims that they knew about test tube babies long before, which was why Diana of Ephesus, everybody thinks she's covered in boobies, but they're not. They're eggs. those are eggs all
Right.
over her body. And so if they knew, and think of how many people are in India, and have you ever seen very many India families with 12 kids? Because they don't do that. They're poor. And so where do these kids all go? Like, I mean, I'm just saying, if they're messing around, they're fucking around and finding out, is what I think. And Americans have unique problems.
America.
Right. And they have unique problems that nobody else has genetically. Like, you can tell an American when you travel. I mean, not always, but JJ, there's something to that. They
No,
know when
you can smell an American.
yeah, it's weird. And we have like different we're like allergic to our own fucking food. Like, come on.
You know what
Like,
I mean? Like,
it's not right. Yeah, it's weird.
yeah, the food, you don't get all this preservative stuff in Europe and everywhere else that you know that
Well,
really
that's
come
what
out
I
when
was
you're
gonna
sweating and
say.
stuff like that.
I
It can't
don't
be
want to
just
I don't want to
that,
shift the
know?
conversation.
Well, no, you can see it.
but,
You
like,
can see it for sure.
I
If
think
I'm-
this
if I
it
may
goes back
fin-
to the Rockefeller. I'll let
Sorry,
you
we
finish.
have a
but
delay.
I think it goes back to the Rockefellers, man, because they introduced their medical system and their dietary stuff and all
True.
that. They changed everything up. So, and we don't have to go down that
No,
path.
no,
Well, we
you're
can,
fine.
because you know who the Rockefellers are, right? They're a member of the
Yeah.
Society of Cincinnati.
Boom,
They're
there
also
it is.
they're also related to Joseph Smith. So.
There it is.
These families stick together. They stick together. You know, these society families and
True.
these Venus families, if you will, because again, it goes back a long time. They've been sticking together not for just the last couple hundred years either.
Well, and that's why I bring up all the time about genealogy. And somebody was a dick today on my podcast, one of the viewers, and they were like, why is she talking about royal Mormons? I'm like, you guys don't listen to what I'm saying. I'm talking about bloodlines of royal people being here and being disguised basically into the regular population as poor farmers. That's what I'm talking about.
I can give you an example of that from a member of the Society of Cincinnati who would later be the King of France. But if I may finish my point on the Serpent Mound situation. So, you know, like you're saying with these advanced understandings you're applying there with the ancient history of the biology and the eggs and stuff, Heidi, the fertility cults, these sex cults, right? If you consider these factors, the advanced mathematics, right? They're going to know more about science and mathematics. They're going to have a greater understanding of just, they're doing astronomy and mathematics at that level. We can't replicate that today, some of the stuff they did with these mounds with the most advanced surveying equipment. For example, Newark, Ohio, they got a straight line mounds, 6 foot tall, I think it used to be 6 foot, 5 foot tall. It's now a little bit 3 foot tall, but 50 yards straight line. I've talked to modern day surveyors. Their lasers don't go that far. They only go about 40 yards in a straight line like that. So on these regards, and considering they're a sex cult, why is that a serpent then? I understand there is horned serpent worship everywhere, like you were pointing out, Tim, in Canada and the old worlds, but to me that looks like, especially since they had an obelisk on it at one point, that looks like a sperm and an egg. And then that's a calendar. That serpent mound, as we call it, is actually, I would call it sperm and egg mound, or it's a universal calendar, right? So it's not only describing the universal, nature of human reality as far as the conception of birth. Everything that is constructed into that mound will help you sustain life. So it describes the inception of life, and then it describes how you sustain life because it tells you all the seasons.
The book of the cow. Yeah.
I don't know Paracelsus. Oh, the old Greek fellow. Yeah.
Yeah. So messed
German.
up. Same thing.
He was German.
Yep.
Oh, German. Okay.
But the
I'm
same
vaguely
thing
familiar.
about this, keeping it homunculus type stuff. Yeah.
Well, I just think it sustains life, right? It's a monument describing how life is incepted, and then again it tells that within the curves of that mound, everything about that mound is very ornately constructed, and they're on purpose. It tells you the phases of the moon, the changes of the seasons, the equinoxes, everything. It reads the entire sky.
The bottom of this book right here does the same thing with the temple, the keystone of Mormonism, and it shows the old temple building. I mean, it's everything. It's all the moon phases, the sun phases, the everything. And we're not supposed to study astrology in Mormonism. It's naughty. Yeah. So
what do you guys think about this one right here? It's called Tony's Mound in Florida.
Yeah, so that's kind of a mixture of more of the Mesoamerican, right? That's kind of what we see these cultures kind of combine when we look at areas like this, right?
Look at this design. And this is spread out over acres and acres. This is huge. And there's water. because they were utilizing water
Oh, they were
for its
irrigating, yeah.
properties.
Yeah. Oh, these weren't dumb people. They were not dumb
No,
people. No.
I mean, I don't know what this is, but this looks like a sigil. What do you think, Heidi?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it gets
It
interesting down here in
definitely.
these
Well, that looks like a
southeastern.
bug.
Mm-hmm.
This looks like a bug right here with two antennas.
Yeah, it's insect-like. It's alien
This
looking.
is the compass right here from Freemasonry.
Mm-hmm.
Boop, boop.
Well, that's what I'm saying. These are interesting because of that. We see so many mixed cultures. We see the Mesoamerican, Mississippian, and the Ohio Valley mound building cultures down in the southeast, and it does. You can see all these different symbols and stuff throughout there. So you see these large geometric patterns. That's from the Ohio culture, right? Then you see some of the, all these components you see here are from these various cultures of the mound builders. These are some of the later ones, right?
Yeah, this is what is it?
They're
600
saying that's
BC
450 BC,
or
huh? That's
450
interesting.
BC. Yeah,
That's the Adena. That's the Adena era. That
yeah.
I'm not familiar with that. That's
Man,
from Greg Little, huh?
Yeah, man. This is shrouded in mystery, man. That's why I brought this up because nobody talks about this one, and it's. I mean,
Yeah, because most of them are not from that old down there.
right, right. I mean, like you brought up the Phoenicians earlier. I think this whoever they were able to travel as well. I think that's why all these
Time.
Gulf, if they were in the vicinity of the Gulf, they were seafaring, I think.
Oh, for sure.
What?
And like if they're
Well,
doing water stuff around here, like so this is all some sort of
It's
ritual
all,
space with water going around it
yes,
then, right?
bro. There's a moat around this whole entire thing. That
Right,
but when
right.
did they start traveling to other ways? Right? Like,
well,
I
yeah.
mean, like hyper,
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I like this site. I'm
Oh,
not sure if I'm familiar with this one specifically, but I do like that the sites of the southeast
well, that
with a
gets in
mixture of the
the
cultures.
Heidi. That gets in the portals.
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like travel. Like where could they travel astrally?
Exactly.
And I mean, I'll go
Exactly.
there, man. That's not too woo woo for me. I think one of the coolest things that we're seeing right now is, and I know people are gonna have different thoughts on this, but this recent Joe Rogan episode with Hal Puthoff, like I've been telling people for years that personally, I think that remote viewing is very real.
Oh,
I
they have CIA docs on that. That's
Yeah,
declassified. That's
but
real.
like it
For
seems
sure.
like once you see it on Joe Rogan, it's a good indicator that the culture is moving forward enough to accept these things as truth.
Sure.
And I think that's
But
where
I'm
we're at.
also concerned by it because Hal Puthoff's an OT7 level Scientologist, and
Right.
he's also been actively involved in numerous alien psyops over the last 40 years. So these things do concern me. That being said, I don't disagree with you, Tim. I
Yeah.
do
I
think
didn't
remote
watch
viewing's
that.
real.
No,
I
I
didn't
think
watch that, but the CIA docs are real.
you're right.
I mean,
Well,
It's
I do think it's real. I just think it's
important to
getting
point that stuff
packaged
out.
and sold to us improperly. Just like we're discussing our histories being packaged and sold to us improperly. These abilities that are innate to humans, or at least a lot of folks, much like any other skill set, I think some are more skilled than others. But these abilities like remote viewing, I think folks have an innate ability to it. We're just being packaged in the wrong concepts and being
Right,
sold to
right.
us the wrong way.
I don't like this remote viewing being told to the public or disclosed to the public under the broader umbrella of disclosure as it relates to UFOs. I don't really care for this modern disclosure movement and the people involved with it. They're all shady. They're all, CIA spooks. They're all, etc. But and I'm not like a huge Hal Puthoff fan, but when I see a show like that, what it tells me is that, okay, stuff that I've been telling people for years and years and years that's true. Most people and it's been regarded as conspiracy. I think it's saying that, well, a big portion of society is now going to think twice, like, oh, okay, maybe remote viewing, maybe there's something there. Maybe there is something to that. And in a grander scheme of things, it almost like represents us as a collective going back to what the ancients had in a way, consciously. It's like, are we coming
I
full
think
circle?
I
Because
think you're spot on. I think that's exactly what these ancient alien cargo cultists like Joe Rogan and Hal Puthoff want to do. Convince us of their belief systems, which is rooted in these ancient belief systems of these alien ideas. Yeah, I know. I think you're right. I don't know if it's good or bad or indifferent, but
well,
um,
it might not be good or bad yet. It's too soon to tell, maybe. Because here's the thing, man. Like I agree with what you're saying. Like, yeah, that's sketchy. Like Scientology, all that is sketchy. But I also kind of agree with a lot of things that Hal Puthoff himself said.
oh yeah, he's a smart
I
fella.
didn't watch it. Yeah, I didn't watch
So,
that one because
No, I
I
haven't
don't
seen that. No, I
ever.
haven't seen it either.
Nah.
I'm familiar with his work.
but I'm glad you
He's a
pointed
close
out what you
associate
did.
of Oh, go ahead, Tim. I
I
apologize.
was just going to say, I'm glad you pointed out what you did about him because it's important to know those things. It's important to know that we might be being psyoped.
Sure. And I think it is important to know kind of these dynamics and like where he's coming from, right? So, back in the early 90s, he was a part of a team called the Aviary that tried to convince folks they had an alien out in Area 51 that liked to eat strawberry ice cream. These are amongst many other things that Hal Puthoff's been involved in, but he's in recent years he's been an associate of Brandon Fugel.
Yes.
Brandon Fugel of Skinwalker Ranch. I
it.
have some pictures in there of that I had. But I do want to say this too before I get nailed on it, because somebody's going to call me out and they're going to say I was kidding. Joseph Smith, founder of the Mormon Church, seventh cousin, 2 times removed to Rockefeller. Just so you know.
There you go. These
Wait,
society families stick together.
Say that again. Joseph Smith is related to Rockefeller?
Yeah, Nelson Rockefeller.
Wow.
Yeah, 7th cousin, 2 times removed. They all are.
Yeah.
Well, it's these families, they stick together, and again, in the last couple hundred years, it's thousands of years they've been sticking together. But the Rockefellers are an early Dutch family to New Amsterdam. They changed it. They dropped the N later to Rockefeller. They were a society family.
This is why I'm constantly bringing up genealogy, and people are like, "Oh, stick in your lane. Why are you talking about royals?" I'm like, because it's all together. Like, what? I'm just trying to help you guys.
Yeah, but we've been kind of cultured to think it's not important, right? And generally speaking, as a general public, right? Like the response you're getting has been very programmed into people, I think.
Tim was the best response. He was like, "Oh my heck, do you know about these people?" Because he was around when I first learned about it, and I got a bunch of my stuff back, and I was like, "Tim, I'm like related to bad people. These are bad people." You're related to like 7 queens.
yeah. I looked at it, and it's dense. It's she's related to like a power family and a super powerful lineage of women, which I always forget the term for that. Matt.
Matriarch.
Is it
matriarchs?
Yeah,
matriarchal.
It's where the bloodline, instead of coming through the fathers, it comes through the mothers.
Yep.
And like Heidi's goes back. We don't know how far it goes back because
the king is my 8th great grandpa right now. The king of England.
It sounds like, according to that one Talbot fella, you might be more close related to a king than you think, though, because that fellow's supposedly the bastard child of King George.
Yep, but on the unlegitimate, like the other story, he's my 8th, but yeah, my 8th grandpa.
No, I shared some of my
story,
I shared some of my genealogy with Heidi too. We were distant cousins in these same regards amongst these same families. They stick together.
Mm-hmm. They do, and every time I research somebody new for Mormonism, even weird ones like that Beaver Island guy, I'm like, how am I related to him? What is going on?
Same families.
It's weird.
Is that Beaver Island in Lake Michigan or the Great Lakes?
I think it's Wisconsin. Yeah.
I think that's this
Beaver Island, king of the Beaver Island.
You know what's funny is I think that's a place that I've researched before. I have to go double check, but there's a island up there, and I think it's Beaver Island that's rumored to have an old pyramid on it.
Well, was my one of my great family. Mm-hmm. Who knows? But
Wisconsin's a mysterious place.
Well, speaking of pyramids, I did have one today for us, and
Michigan
I didn't put it on there, but the Sumas pyramid here in Utah, where they still offer, if you want to go be a mummy, and they'll like do that for you after you die for a certain amount of money.
Sign me up.
But Sumas, did you catch it, Tim?
Yeah.
Howard Hughes, Summa.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
It's all the same. I looked it up.
Summa Core.
And mummies. Like, that's another thing we haven't talked about today.
The Mormons.
Like, they were finding mummies everywhere here.
The Mormons had them some mummies.
Yeah.
They bought a whole house full of mummies.
There are old newspaper articles that I found that allude to there being like major problems with people stealing mummies from the States and like selling them to Europe, selling them to across the pond. And like they found 3,000 mummies in the vicinity of a cave in Kentucky and Colorado too. Like this region, Heidi, where you were showing a lot of those pictures, that was like near Colorado, right?
All of the pictures I showed everybody today were in Utah.
They were Utah,
but they were the east side, right on the eastern border there.
Yeah, like it's Wyoming, Utah, and then Colorado, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, I just
that
don't know where, but you looked it up. So
It was like
yeah.
kind of central, eastern border, central, midway up the state. But yeah, right there on the border. Yep.
Well, that one of those areas of Colorado, they were having a problem with people stealing their mummies and selling them to Europe. And you'll never hear anything about this today because this
Right.
is
Lucy
too swept
Mack
up.
Smith bought a bunch of mummies. Joseph Smith bought some mummies, and they
Yeah, he
wanted
loved Egypt.
Yeah, she wanted to like basically just do a wax museum of mummies, not with wax, but just she just wanted to
With
stack them in
actual
her
mummies.
house and be like, let's just be safe. And Joseph was being wild up, so that didn't work
What
out.
if you think about it, the Society of Cincinnati, who was brought the Western world our understanding of Egyptology, right? So that was all relative to the Napoleon mission, Napoleon Bonaparte. So he was a Society of Cincinnati member, a very important Society of Cincinnati member.
Are
in
you
fact.
telling me that the guy who
Merovingians.
maybe started the FBI or was associated with, was that his brother or something?
So legend has it that's his grandnephew, but I would
Okay.
argue that may be true because that may be his grandnephew biologically, but allegedly his younger brother dies in America. I would argue that may have in fact been Napoleon.
And he
Oh,
was
Nonetheless-
obsessed with the bees. Don't forget, he put them all over his cloak when he got married. Just so you guys know, he sewed real bees on their cloaks when they got married. Mr. Napoleon did. And what is this? This is the beehive state that I live in. And there is some real funky tales about the Merovingians and Joseph Smith.
Well, that's what I was mentioning earlier about the beehives with Utah, because these folks, it goes beyond just the Mormons. It is a society thing.
Bees they've been used
say-
throughout the years in esoteric orders, right? Like
Well-
even
Well, I
maybe
mean-
even the
Oh,
Masons.
yeah. Yeah, the
Yeah,
Masons.
think of the hive mind concept, right?
Mhm.
Well, but this particular sect of polygamist Utahns believe that they have the divine right to rule and that they were actually related to specifically the Merovingian bloodline, and that Jesus had more children and all this weird stuff like that weird show that was out. And this is the Kingstons, and they only have sex with each other, so they're all inbred really bad because they marry their brothers and stuff. So
I mean, what you're describing applies to the
still,
Society of
to this
Cincinnati
day.
families, if you ask me.
still
more
to
of a
this
broad-
day.
That's a broader policy outside the Kingstons, I think, because I mean,
Right.
Lucy Mack Smith and old Joe Smith, weren't they cousins?
They were cousins. Yep.
I mean,
But
I
this
know
is
my family tree
closer.
looks like a pole, though. You know what I mean? It looks like an Appalachian pole. It doesn't have any branches.
Right. Yep. It's weird. And they have a whole thing. The Kingstons got so rich that they hired a geneticist to come in so that their children wouldn't be handicapped. So there's
I mean,
that.
I don't know about all these rumors of inbreeding.
Oh no.
Well, they probably figured out a way around the inbreeding, right?
Yeah, they brought the geneticist in, and no, they still inbreed. They still marry like uncles and brothers.
In my back.
You're back.
I'm just saying, I got a lot of first cousin marriages, including my great grandfolks on both one side of my family tree, both of those on that side. And I don't know. I don't have any web. I'm surprised I don't have web feet and a
You don't have a
recessed chin
6
line.
finger or anything.
And a
like
70
that.
IQ, but these families, what I'm saying is they all think they're all from those same Merovingian origins, these society families, and they're also all from they all again from the Templars. I don't know if they all think this, but the Templar mindset is that they descended from a historical Jesus and Mary, and those were the king and queen of their kingdom, and they were the descendants of that kingdom.
But their Jesus don't look quite the same or come from like the same. It's very strange.
Is it rock and roll? It was like a long-haired rock and roll Jesus. Looks like he plays guitar for a rock band.
Right. I always postulate that their Jesus is probably a fallen angel. I mean, honestly,
I was thinking it's probably a giant.
God had sex with Mary to make Jesus, and that it wasn't created by Holy Spirit. So it's definitely a whole different thing.
Well, there you go. So I actually have a noted theory it's a giant, right there, Jesus. So there's actually and again, I don't want to go too far into it, but it's a rough family feud going back again through the Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus family. So Cincinnatus was his name. He was from the Lucius Quintus family. That's just Cincinnatus would be his first name, as we refer to it today here in our modern incarnation of English. But if you look at where his origins go back to, they go back to the kingdom of Edessa, the same place where the Knights Templars King Jesus goes back to, old King Akbar, King Isis of Akbar. There we go. He was of the kingdom of Edessa. It was a Persian Egypto-Jew mixture, combination of kingdoms. His father, I think, was Persian. His mother was Egyptian Jew. So
Okay.
it had the Zoroastrian kind of astrology stuff with the Persian stuff. There's a lot of mixtures, but that's where it goes back to. And there's beefs between those folks and the king, the royal family there, and the Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus, ancestry there. So I think there's a lot to be said, and I think according to the Templar knowledge, their idea is that their Jesus might have been a giant,
Well,
one
and
of these
calling
giants we find at
God,
the mounds.
yeah, calling God Elohim right there, that's a fallen angel, I
Yeah.
mean,
And I think there's
so
something to be said about these things because, again, I mean, well, there's a rough understanding of a lot of these concepts, and when you even talk about mounds being connected across, like Barry Fell found out when he wrote that America BC book you were describing to us there before,
mhm.
Tim, with the Micmac language. When he wrote that, Harvard professor dude got a lot of backlash because he suddenly started connecting locations from the old world to the new world before
Uh-oh.
BC, and you couldn't do that.
Can't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, Barry Fell's a very interesting gentleman. I'm I want to know more about him because I know a little bit, but I think he's got books out that I don't know about, like that I haven't read. So I'm gonna try to find some more of his books, and I've
They
just
didn't
heard
whack him, huh?
crazy
They didn't whack him
stories.
after that book.
Well, I mean, they may have whacked him in
Mm,
the end. I'm not. I mean, he went
I don't know.
way against the narrative. I mean, he even snuck into the Smithsonian. Well, he didn't sneak in. He had clearance, but what he was doing in there was sneaky on one particular occasion because he was hunting down the legend of these little people, um, which I've come to believe are very real. The
Oh
Cherokee
no,
talked
yeah.
about them. They're all over the place in
Listen,
North America.
we
Barry
we
Fell
wouldn't
went
be
in
on a
there.
computer if they weren't a thing because the supercomputer guy was digging under his house and
That's right.
talking to
That's
him.
right. That's right.
So,
JJ, do you know about the Barry Fell little people story? He went into the Smithsonian and found a body
hmm.
of one.
I'm not familiar with that story. I'm
Okay.
familiar with Barry Fell and some of his work, but that sounds interesting.
Yeah. I'll have to find. I've been told the story by an accurate source that I respect. He's a really awesome researcher. Um, and I've read about it too. I'll have to find out where I read about it and give you the details on that. But
Sure.
there's many little sites across the nation. I know there's one here in Tennessee. It's in White County, Tennessee. It's near Sparta, where they found thousands of graves of little people,
Seymour
Listening.
Cray. I'm just
inches
saying.
inches tall. In fact, I have a picture of one that was found out
The Fae?
west.
That sounds like the Fae. That doesn't sound like little people. That sounds like fairies, right?
Is this
Inches.
what you're describing to me, sir? Sounds like gremlins,
Yeah, it's something
Or
little
in
green
fairies,
goblins,
whichever
little
way.
green.
there's probably both, guys. I believe in the Fae as well.
Right.
This is some sort of an actual race of
But they're not
humanoid.
described as little green, like little goblins, right? Like we've kind of like Disneyfied those things, like the
No,
the fairy and the fae, right?
no. These
Yeah.
these look like
They're kind of demonic and leprechaun-y, like if I'm not mistaken, the fae are,
this
which
is
The Fae are naughty. Yeah, the Fae are
this
yeah,
is
naughty.
could
Tom
fall into this
Thumb.
category, I suppose. Leprechaun and
This
demonic.
is real. This right here is real. It's a real mummified little person.
Oh my
It's called Tom Thumb.
It looks kind of pygmy-like, right? Like from the
Mhm.
Pacific.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a pygmy book with the Mormons, just saying. I did a whole show on the pygmy thing. It was weird. This
But
guy, yeah.
But Barry Phelps got into the Smithsonian, I guess it's before he lost his clearance, because I'm assuming he did, and was able to go in there and locate some of the bodies.
Mm.
So these, time and time again, if you really look into the little people, you'll find that they did exist.
Oh, I'm sure they still do. They just took off. There's a whole park here in Utah that has like a place for like gnomes. It's like a gnome park. And like, I mean, obviously there's nothing there. It's just for fun, but for
No,
fun.
that's what they want you to think.
Yeah, exactly. They just
Lafayette.
say, look, don't leave out anything for them and don't engage them even if they want to clean your house. Cause I guess they're assholes. So that's good advice.
Lafayette.
Exactly. No, his whole name is rooted in a mound, right? He's
Yeah.
definitely a mound person.
Yeah, I mean, hey,
Wow.
Fritz Zimmerman, like I think his last book is all about how there's a paranormal aspect to the mounds, and it's tied up in the little people, these gnomes, these fairies, the fae.
Mhm.
It's all I think that there's a reason why we have these legends.
For sure.
Dragons too. I mean, I
Oh,
won't even get started on that, but
yeah.
like I
You're
think
gonna love that conversation with Ed Cassis, isn't he, Heidi? The
Oh
Occult
yeah.
Reject show we
Oh
just did. It's all
yeah.
about
Just wait.
dragons.
Yeah. Just wait. Yeah. They were telling me about it. I wasn't there, but they were telling me about it.
Oh, you weren't
Yeah.
on that one? Oh, I apologize. I thought you were
No,
on that
it's
one.
okay. It's okay. I got told about it though, and so
For
yeah.
some reason, I thought you were there. Well, you're gonna enjoy that one, Heidi, because it gets
I know. I'm
interesting.
sad. I was home. I was like, man, I
Oh,
wanted to
I
go.
didn't know. Oh, yeah. For some reason, I pictured you in that conversation. I was like, what is it? All right, fair enough. Well, yeah,
I was
both
there
of
with
you.
little. Yeah. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
maybe I'm mashing those two
Oh,
conversations
yeah.
together in my
Because they
brain.
were kind of, yeah, similar. Like
This
We
has
people.
no, we talked about a
been
lot of the same stuff. Yeah, a lot of the ancient alien
uh,
cargo cult belief systems of catapulting into the sky and these ancient cultures that where these things come from.
I
no.
know. I was sad. I got told about it after the fact. I
Yeah,
was like,
because I
well,
don't.
hey.
Even as you're describing to me right now, you weren't there. I'm like, are you sure?
Well, I'll have to
I'm
tell Nick
sorry. I wish you
too.
were there. It'd have been a
I
great.
was
It would have been
just
great.
kidding.
It would have been a better conversation in my like I said, my brain
Uh,
hole. You were there.
Yeah, I'll check. I'll
yeah,
have to check that
that's
one
what
out, man.
matters.
That sounds like a good conversation. I mean, just I've looked
I'll give Nick a hard
into
time next time. No, sorry about
That's
that,
right.
Tim. Go ahead.
to giants. I think there's enough evidence to equivocally say they're real. I've looked into
Mhm.
these little people. I think there's something to that one as well.
Right.
I could just keep going. Like,
Oh yeah.
even if
So
you look into the fairies, there's so much stuff out there. Like before this whole UFO thing, which that seemed to start in the public's eyes in 1947. That seems to be where they rolled out this
yeah.
propaganda campaign dealing with UFOs and stuff like that. But before that, you were looking at thousands of years of fairy sightings that are documented.
Check out this
On
book.
mounds. On
Check out this
mounds.
book where you like about the Pygmies and Dream Giants by Kilton Stewart, and he was a Mormon. So
Interesting.
it's very weird. Yeah, there's a lot of weird things that always it's 1 degree of separation from a Mormon.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to say it sounds like you're implying, Tim, the Smithsonian some sort of vacuum project to make sure none of these pygmies or
Oh,
giants or anything anomalous sees the light of day, right?
what?
Yeah, I think it's our Vatican vault.
It is. Yeah.
So do you know the origin story of the Smithsonian?
Go for it, man.
It is this Anglo-American influence that I'm talking about, this anti-liberty, one world order, new world order, whatever you want to call it, right? But it's manifesting in America and subverting America's independence and sovereignty through a faction of the Society of Cincinnati, and it has been since George Washington was poisoned on July 4th, 1799. And I would argue before that, when folks like Benjamin Rush? Stockton. Yeah, Benjamin Rush, one of the founding fathers, who was a Surgeon General for Washington's army, attempted a coup during the middle of the war. So, Washington, faced a lot of these things, but it, manifests further with the Aaron Burr assassinating Alexander Hamilton, two society members, one being the President General, that being Hamilton. So, you fast forward a few years, you get Jefferson Davis, the other first president in America, the Confederate States of America. He's a U.S. Senator from Mississippi. And he's integral in forming the Smithsonian Museum. Smithsonian.
Oh,
When he comes back, I'll remind him of where he's at.
A
yes.
fellow by the name of Putnam.
Hey, you
We
cut out there, JJ. You're
Oh,
talking about Jefferson Davis,
oh,
and
so Jefferson Davis being a member of the society, he's a senator of Mississippi, I think around circa 1848, when he's leading the committee to start the Smithsonian Institution with Anglo financial funding there from the Smithsonian Fellow, right? So the institution started in that process through Congress with a fellow with the assistance of a fellow by the name of Putnam.
oh
He
yes,
was
I
a
know about Putnam.
descendant of, I believe he was a descendant of Rufus Putnam, the general from Rhode Island. So likely a hereditary member. So the first thing they do is that Squire and Davis study of the mounds, right? That's the first mission of the Smithsonian. So
Mhm.
it's all very, I mean, I don't know what point in time they decided to start hiding stuff. That was from the very beginning. I would argue yes, but it is very Society Cincinnati related. The Smithsonian.
It kicked in 1880 with Wesley Powell in his report to,
Sure.
so they made Wesley Powell the director of the Bureau of Ethnology,
Yep.
and it was a branch of the Smithsonian, and so he goes to write up his yearly report to the director of the Smithsonian, and in that report is where he spells out the cover up. Like he literally says that we're not going to allow this and that. We're going to say that the natives, he says they lacked higher intellect. They were savages. He goes through all that. He says, the dating is going to go after Columbus. We're not going to date stuff before Columbus. And if we do, we're not going to tie it to other cultures around the world, meaning that he didn't want to like draw or shed light on the fact that maybe people from elsewhere came here before Columbus.
Right.
So, and there's a lot of that stuff. It's if anybody, I'll pull up a picture of it here in a second. This report I'm talking about is more of a book than it was a report. And it was a shifty one at that. Because Powell was not. He's not to be venerated, in my opinion. I think he's not this hero. I think Rick Osmond calls him a cookie cutter hero, and I think that's kind of accurate. But that was 1880, where at least I can say and point to and say that it was documented that there's a cover up. Now, did it start then?
No, that's a good point. No, that's when they corporatized it, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's a great point of when they made it. This is the business, right? So, what I would assert before then is there's a lot of other subterfuge amongst these same characters. Like, for example, like it's part of these secret wars that go on in the Civil War. I think the Civil War within the society, which manifested in the U.S. Civil War, back to the society hereditary members being elected president. Abraham Lincoln's grandfather, Abraham Lincoln, captain Washington's Army out of Virginia chapter, Society Cincinnati. So I think that was part of his problems, was being a hereditary member who got elected president. But he in regards to the activity around these mounds, I don't know if I would argue the whole war is about the society and their business, right? Because they fractured beforehand. But Robert E. Lee and a number of his other generals crossed enemy lines north of the Mason-Dixon and began raiding Masonic lodges in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana. Right, this is near the end of the war, so I think they were on their own mission to get so those Masonic lodges were built upon mounds, and the contents of those mounds supposedly were inside those lodges. So whatever these dudes were after, they were after the contents of those mounds, if you ask me.
Yeah, hold tight real quick, JJ. So for anybody out there who's interested, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm referencing. It's the first annual report, Bureau of Ethnology, by John Wesley Powell. If you want to find the stuff that I talked about today or just a second ago, you'll want to read pages 72 through 75. It's all there. So now back to what you're saying. Who raided the Freemason lodges? Who?
So there's a lot of good information, even if the dude's full of shit, pal. There is a lot of good information in those studies. You can garner a lot of good stuff. But
yeah,
it was around I think about a year prior to the war, the end of the war. Robert E. Lee took a cavalry faction and I think north of Somerset into Somerset, Pennsylvania. So basically all across the Mason-Dixon. My hands are filthy from all the doobies I've been rolling, so I apologize. It's a little super black for some reason in the screen. Somerset, and then you just keep moving east along like the Monongahela, and all the rivers, the Ohio River. They started going north. They started raiding towns and Masonic lodges in northern cities in the Union near the end of the war. And, it's not really recognized that they did this, but all across Pennsylvania, from like midway, like kind of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Somerset region, all the way over to Illinois. They had raided all of the river towns and all the Masonic lodges. They actually got busted. Robert E. Lee and his folks got away, I think. One of his generals got busted almost near Cleveland. These dudes were in deep. Like, they were almost by Kirtland. Ohio, they're Heidi. So we know that's important mountain territory, right?
All those places you just mentioned, but a lot of the towns in those states and in that general area, those are towns built on mound sites.
Absolutely, specifically the Masonic lodges, specifically, and these guys were Masons as well. And again, they were the Confederate generals, and They're all part of the Society of Cincinnati that disbanded, briefly before the start of the war. So whatever these wars are, whatever these disputes are amongst these kinfolk, they wanted these secrets of these mounds, and again, they're happy to steal it from one another, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Heidi's had on this guy. I don't remember his name, but he's like a SRI victim. Is that how that's said?
Yeah, are you talking about Nathan Reynolds?
Yes, and Reynolds says that his family were digging up mounds and getting out tablets or something, and figuring out how to use them in magic.
It's the Mormon way. It's the Mormon way.
It is the Mormon way. My husband just said, "You guys are still talking. What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
I'm like,
we can
I'll text you.
We can
He's
wrap it
like-
up here soon because this has been awesome.
This has been fun. He was just curious of the topics, and I was like, "There's like 30. It's fine."
Yeah. I mean, actually,
It's
you know
been
what?
fun.
This is probably a good place to wrap it up because it's kind of like we came because
Yeah.
the trend here today that I've noticed is like the magic of the mounds,
Yeah.
Yep.
the esoteric lean to it, the occultist tradition of it, and all that. Like we really highlighted that today, and that's been awesome. And we kind of came full circle in that regard.
I
So,
think it was great.
Yeah.
I'm one to talk, so I'm not one. If my kid wasn't needing to go to
conversation.
bed, I'd stay for another hour.
Oh yeah, it's we cleared 2 hours. This is a good time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I appreciate both of you. This has been great. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Yes. Let's do it
Um,
again. This was fun. We should invite Nick to the next one. That
We
would
should.
be
I was going
great.
to say, how about we do a Fridays?
I
Y'all
should've.
both join us for
Yes,
a Fridays.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we'll
Let's do it.
continue these same conversations because,
Oh, that would be
as I was
fun.
saying, I was telling Tim there before having him back, and then obviously, Heidi, you're always welcome back on another Fridays. In fact, you ended up being the guest instead of the co-host last Friday.
Hey, that really worked to our favor. So
Right,
yeah.
Yeah, because and like there's so much other issues surrounding this issue. Like this is an iceberg and we just chipped
Oh,
it.
this
a
is
piece of it
barely
off.
because we didn't even get to Nazis and all the
Right.
this goes, and I will say this for one thing too, as far as your point, JJ, and how they stick together. I will say this: if you're related to one royal, you're almost related to them all. And if you're related on my dad's side, if you're related to one president, you're almost related to them all.
And that's
With the
the
exception
other
of Martin
thread.
Van Buren.
Yep.
That's
I'll
the-
check.
That's the other thread that I noticed coming up today is this, the bloodlines,
Yep.
the reality of the
Real.
bloodlines. So
It's real.
yeah, and
It's
you know
gold
what?
to some people. They're all about that
That's-
blood.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah.
Well,
the strength
we'll do
is in
this
the
again.
sinews. The power's in the sinews. And you guys want to know about why they're digging up bones. Well,
Mm,
well. We'll
Yeah.
save that for JJ show.
Yeah, that's awesome.
No, Nick will have a lot to weigh in, I'm sure, on the occultism on a lot of these
Oh.
topics. I'm not a cult. I mean, I guess technically I am a former occultist, as holding numerous priesthoods within the Mormon Church in the past, but I'm not. I'm saying I'm not an occultist in the general sense.
We didn't know.
Yeah.
You know,
I was gonna say,
would
yeah.
actually there would actually be a little bit of a commonality between the show I did on Fridays and this show, and if we did another
Awesome.
show with
Yeah. Let's do it.
with the three of us and Nick.
We're gonna mash them together. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking. Yeah, I like where we're at.
Let's
We're gonna
do it.
mash them together.
Yeah.
You know who else would love to come to that is probably Headless.
I was gonna say, and
of the
Jen. I was gonna say,
Yeah.
you tell Jen.
We'll have
Jen's
10
gonna,
people.
Oh man, I was saying, we'll have 10 people.
I know we can't have both. We have to figure that out. Yeah.
Actually, I think we'll get it squared away though.
Yeah,
I do like both of those gents' inputs. They're
I do
especially within the
too.
areas of the occult.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. Let's
You know
wrap it up here,
Right.
and we could talk about it after the show. And
Awesome.
because I want to give you guys an opportunity to tell everyone where they can find you.
Awesome. Well, JJ, you go first because this is kind of our combined show. Or I should have.
Well, Heidi, I appreciate it, ma'am. As always, I always enjoy our conversations as a fellow Exmo. It's always great dabbling in these Mormon discussions, but I enjoy your parapolitics and Society of Cincinnati stuff you brought to my attention. So, I've the Bouvier family that you brought to my attention as far as Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, she being a Society of Cincinnati, or the daughter of a Society of Cincinnati hereditary member, Jack Bouvier. He's actually seems to be the epicenter of two memberships in the Society of Cincinnati.
Mr.
So,
Blackjack.
I flagged a couple genealogy posts about the dubious nature of Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis's Bouvier family tree. Everyone's got it wrong. There's numerous blog posts about these things. Her third great grandfather is allegedly Francois Bouvier. I would argue that's General Francois Bouvier of the Society of Cincinnati, a very close associate of George Washington, member of the French chapter of the Society. But I would argue that that's the Francois Bouvier, and that's the reason why there's such controversy. However, on record, old Blackjack Bouvier, her father, got membership in 1948 when his father passed. John Bouvier #2, I believe, was what he legal name was. He was a member of the Maryland chapter, and that's because his mother's father, so second great grandfather from Blackjack, second great grandmother. There was no men in between to pass it to, so it went to his father, and then on to him. So then I ask, was John F. Kennedy Jr. a double member of the Society of Cincinnati, both the Maryland chapter and the French? It looks like it, right? I never really considered it, and I've long considered that was a parapolitical assassination, but because his father being the president, that doesn't get passed down hereditary. However, the hereditary members get passed down, so it seems like JFK Jr., who, according to the QAnon folks, is still alive, right?
Depending with that picture that I showed. Anyway,
JJ coming
apparently
in with
he's a double member
content.
Well, JFK Jr. might be Onassis's kid, but
I agree with you on that one. But
yeah,
I agree with that. Well, then, in that nature, he's getting at least one membership from his mother, then, right?
But that
I'm sorry, no, it's still two memberships, I guess, because they're both from his mother.
And Illuminati confirmed on that one anyway. So either way, so many secret societies.
Well, I was gonna say, well, there you go. But think of the epicenter of activity that dude's sitting at, then, right? If you had double membership to the society.
Who was his bloodline then? Who was Kennedy's bloodline?
Well, you haven't seen the photo.
Oh, well, no. Heidi makes some great arguments that his actual father was Aristotle Onassis, and
he looks just like him too.
He looks just like him.
Okay.
He's always had that Greek Mediterranean look to him anyway.
Yeah.
But his mother's father was a member through the Maryland chapter, and I would argue he's also a member through the French chapter. No one wants to confirm that they're descended from Francois Bouvier, George Washington's friend and general in the French chapter.
I gotta do it. Keep talking for 1 second. I'm gonna.
So I think that's interesting because there's all these genealogical websites that have a controversy over Jacqueline Bouvier's paternal, her father's paternal lineage, her lineage, her Bouvier lineage.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
Well, but Jackie married Onassis.
Wow.
Aristotle.
So apparently she's having an affair with him though too already.
Now,
they knew each other.
Now, Timmy boy, look at this.
Yeah, look at that.
Look at the lip. Look, okay, I'm gonna do it.
Look
here.
I mean, he looks Mediterranean.
Here is the hairline. Here is the other hairline. Here is the other hairline. Here is the shape of the nose, down and down, starting at the forehead. We have a pyramid lip right here. Pyramid lip right here. We have the bottom lip is nearly identical, but a little bit flatter. And I'm sorry, but this jawline, except for his chin, is a slight bit sharper, is real close as well. Just saying. That hairline.
And his mom's French, Scottish, and Irish. So, I mean, he looks like a mixture of French, Scottish, Irish, and Mediterranean. I mean, he's got all those features.
His banker was Hitler's banker.
I mean, can you see it, Tim? Look at
I see it. Yeah. I mean, they look like they could be brothers for sure.
Yeah. I think that what happened is when you see that close, and then you've got the kids getting older. Maybe I postulate getting a little too old where, Italians and Greek kids, they look kind of blonde when they're little, but then shit starts to change. So maybe she had to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Before the brunette came in and Jack started going, hey, what the hell's happening?
No, there's a lot to be said about that Onassis heritage of that boy, but he's certainly, it seems to be a double society member. Again, there's a lot to be said about these society folks and what they do to control the world, the Western world, that is. For example, Winston Churchill and FDR, the folks who in charge of the Western Allied forces of Vietnam. I'm getting tired of the forces, the Western forces of World War II. There, both members of the society. Winston Churchill, a hereditary member. So
Guess
I saw
who
that footage of
Churchill's
him.
best friend was? Onassis. Carry
There
on.
you go. Yeah, yeah.
He
and like
changed
I said,
his diapers. Yeah.
and then you look at the occult history of America with Joseph Smith, a member, Jack Parsons, likely a hereditary member of the Massachusetts chapter. Then you even look at folks like John Waters, the creepy Hollywood director, who was an early member of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. I would argue he still is. His third great grandfather, Waters, was the Surgeon General of the Maryland chapter. Probably knew Bouvier's ancestor there. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's a small world. They all know each other in that regard. But I didn't mean to take us on a Society of Cincinnati detour, but appreciate
fun.
the conversation, Tim and Heidi. And folks can check any more of these things out at Operation GCD Live on Wednesdays, Fridays with the Occult Rejects, and routinely along with Heidi as contributors over there on the Occult Rejects. And then got a Patreon Sundays, Operation GCD Live Sundays, which is kind of my tales of high weirdness and true crime stuff that I've encountered over my numerous travels and adventures over the last, I don't know, I suppose 44 years, however long I've been here. But, after 20 years in the military, police, and the Air Force, and I don't even want to include just my whole career that I've gone on traveling everywhere doing stuff. But I always seem to encounter and find myself in the weirdest and strangest of circumstances involving some of the most bizarre events, including the story I'm telling this Sunday regarding Robert the Doll. This haunted doll.
No, Robert the Curse. Oh no,
Robert the Cursed Doll. The Curse of Robert the Doll, which I've likely been haunted by and cursed by for the last 12
curse
plus
of JJ
years.
Vance. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. It happens to me too. I mean, in other ways, trust me, I could regale both of you guys with stories that would take up the entire
being cursed.
The sun would come up before I was finished. Just because I get high strangeness stuff happen to me all the time. It's just
Tim knows
some folks I think some folks it's just normal. So what you're saying is you're like me. It's just that's how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I do like telling these tales. And again, I didn't intend to get cursed by a haunted doll that was sitting in a Civil War fort museum down in Florida Keys. It was built on a mound site, but that seems those are the circumstances I found myself in. So, but
you knew better.
I looked at that doll. I said, and they told me haunted doll. I was like, "You ain't no haunted dolls around here. I'm gonna take a picture of this thing. Get out of here."
Oh, he did it.
Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong.
Woo, that's coming Sunday. You say Sunday?
Yeah, this Sunday. Actually, it's my first Sunday's Patreon Operation GC Live Sundays, 8 p.m.
Check that out, you guys. That sounds wild up. Like that's.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. I got the following one's going to be an encounter I had with a cannibalistic, kid diddling serial killer in Montana, but that's a different story altogether.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of you with John Travolta too. I'm sure there's a story with that.
John Travolta's son was Sylvester Stallone's dead kid.
Oh, that's true. That's for sure true. Yeah, old John Travolta got a little handsy with me in a aircraft hangar.
Yeah. JJ told me about that one.
So there's a lot of content for this concept. That I get it. Yeah, the show it's going to have a lot of episodes.
Sorry,
a lot of unfortunate events and follies, but that are my life. But that's probably because of Robert the Doll. At least the last 12 years of it,
and the Mormon curse. You took
that doesn't help. Yeah. That doesn't help.
Yeah, and with that, I am Heidi Luv of the Unfiltered Rise. Find me everywhere podcasts are served. UnfilteredRisePodcast.com, and I am an occult reject, and so happy to be one. Find me over there, wherever you can, over on YouTube or on Spotify. Thank you so much, Tim.
And thank you both. And I'm Tim Constantine. You are listening to the Sixth Sensory Podcast. As always, break the mold, conquer the realm, and thanks for listening.